for the Get to the Point review.
I almost always have a farmer stand because I drive so much too, but it's just...
Yeah, where are you guys located right now?
Indianapolis. Well, I guess we're in Peru,
way.
but I live in Indy.
Gotcha. Oh, very cool. Half of my family, all my mom's side, are all from Indianapolis.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, that was one thing that was really cool when I was just doing the background research on you. I was like, oh man, you went to Michigan, northern Michigan right afterwards. It's like, yeah, that's awesome. We're just south of you. I've drove to Michigan multiple times for work and even for vacations.
Oh, very cool. Well, my cousin, he owns and operates I think it's called Mimi's Meatballs. There are a couple of meatball restaurants around Indy.
Oh, we're going to look for that.
Yeah.
I do
really
like
good.
myself some meatballs.
I'll visit it on a cheat day. My diet doesn't allow for red meat or pork.
Oh, they do vegan ones that are ridiculous. They taste just like
there
meat.
we go.
I don't do vegan. I'm not that crazy.
He's not insane.
I'm not insane. I'm just on a restrictive diet, Jerome. Thanks, man.
Gotcha. Copy that.
I think we just offended a lot of new age.
Yeah, probably. That's all right. They'll get over it. Oh, all right. Well, everyone, welcome to the Get to the Point Review podcast. I am your co-host, Kelly McKinney of Hohenheim Productions.
And I'm your other co-host, Josh Gitson of Fourth Wall Players.
And this time we are joined by a very special guest. It's Jerome Rand. He is a sailor. And in 2017-2018, he circumnavigated the world in his ship dubbed the Mighty Sparrow. It was 5 capes, 271 days at sea. One magnificent story, and he did it solo without stopping, which makes it a lot less of a vacation and more of a challenge. Thank you very much, Jerome, for being here. How are you doing today?
I'm good, Kelly. Josh, thank you guys for having me on the show. It's a pleasure to be here, and I am really excited. I've never actually delved into talking about sailing movies ever, and this it was really hard to make a list, but I was able to chisel it down a bit.
Yeah.
I imagine it was harder for us to make lists for different reasons than it was for you. You probably had to chisel it down from this huge list of sailing movies you've seen your whole life. I had a small list that I had to build on. I had to go look at other sailing movies and start watching them. Like, I like that.
Had to really look back in the memory banks.
I did. Yeah. So we ended up making it sort of like, okay, aquatic themed.
Yeah, right. Like, does Castaway count? I guess it does. He's on a raft for a little while.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, then not only that, but there's definitely some sailing technique, and he's got to get wind in those sails to get moving forward somehow. And then I got to say, I loved your pre-interview because about half the time our guests are from the film industry, just like we are. And in the film industry, people are afraid to really give their opinions on a movie. And so when you, what was All Is Lost, you were like, I wish I was part of All Is Lost because, well, it wouldn't have been so terrible.
Yeah.
I loved that because I've, YouTube, The Wired, I think it's like Wired, and there's other ones that do it. GQ as well, where they have experts break down.
I've seen those. Yeah.
And every time I've seen a sailor break down sailing movies, All Is Lost gets a huge thumbs down.
It's rough. And the hard part is Robert Redford. I've always enjoyed his movies. He's a great actor, but boy, that just, I don't even, I don't even really touch on it because it's all negative, all I have to say. And I'm a positive guy. So I just steer clear.
So we just pretend like it didn't happen.
We just pretend like it never happened. No, yeah, it's interesting because I get the impression, because I know very, very little about sailing other than I love pirates. But with Robert Redford, it's like, I get the impression that it's basically if I went on a boat by myself, that's what would happen.
Yeah.
All Is Lost. That sums it up pretty well. Just because, other than starboard port, stern and bow. I'm not sure.
Right.
Is this the jib? Is that what this is? We call that a jib?
Hey, you're leaps ahead of most people there.
Yeah.
That's some good nomenclature.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's not bad. It's passable for the first 10 seconds of a conversation. Agreed.
It's so weird, like reading, and you're not that far into it yet, but the Dresden Files, eventually another character has what he calls the water beetle, which is basically it's a little sailboat like the one in Jaws, that they get on a lot. And every time Dresden gets on it, he's like, I don't really know the difference between starboard and port. And he's like, I lean my head against the wall, or maybe it's it's just like, I don't know what to call the bathroom. And it's just it's so funny. And I'm like, I'm reading this, I'm like, oh, we're gonna do a sailing thing. It's kind of interesting that's like sprinkled throughout these books at one point.
Yeah, and now it's like already we have more sailing knowledge than Dresden just from reading Sailing into Oblivion.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There
by the
you
way,
go.
Show the book here.
I was waiting for it. Yeah.
One of the reasons why we've got Jerome on is because I'm very excited to discuss. I hope you're ready, Jerome. I've got a ton of questions about your book. Some of them have to do with I'm an idiot and don't know anything about sailing. Some of them are just like, wow, this is awesome. So,
and I figured Kelly would have a ton of questions, so I have a little bit less. I figured
I'm all yours.
Yeah.
No worries.
Well, and so I guess without further ado, so we can get into those questions, we should jump into our top 5 lists. Yeah? Okay. Because what we're doing is, naturally, as usual, we're going to give our top 5 in a particular genre. Today, it's going to be aquatic themed or navigational sailing movies.
I kept with ones where the bulk of the movie took place on an actual like sailing vessel.
Yeah. And I tried to be obscure and have things that most people probably wouldn't, or really old stuff that people don't watch.
I just haven't seen enough to have been obscure. So
which was probably my.
I didn't do the Pirates movies, which is I saved you guys from that.
I thought about that as well, and I was
that's the first thing that comes to your mind, right? You're like oh, pirates.
Well, and I tried to stay with movies that were sort of based on real life, and for some reason I have this I don't know, fascination with disaster at sea, and so a lot of mine are going to be kind of leaning towards that.
Those are usually to me like, because I thought about that a lot too, like Titanic and Poseidon Adventure and stuff, but I was like, those aren't really sailboats, they're like big cruise liners that crashed and sank, right? But I don't know.
Yeah, well, for me, like I'm looking forward to these.
Yes,
I am looking forward to these.
No, I had plenty to choose from. It's just a lot of them are very mainstream.
Yeah, I tried to avoid ones that were already on the list that you had sent in email, so that way we don't have.
Oh, okay, good. Nice.
I was not aware of the list, so
there was only one on your list that I was unable to avoid, and it is because I just love that movie.
It was Pippi Longstocking, wasn't it?
It was not Pippi Longstocking. I do love that movie. I just didn't make my list for sailing movies. But let's see. Josh, you want to go ahead and kick us off with number 1?
I can kick us off. So my first one on here is The Perfect Storm from 2000. So it was really funny. You're talking about disaster movies at sea.
Yep.
A largely forgotten star-studded cast that ends up facing a historic storm. As the crew all try to escape the sinking ship, they all end up dying in one way or another, usually awfully by the end of the movie.
Yeah, and that's on my list.
It's probably on yours too.
It's on my list. Yeah. Absolutely.
Wow.
Well, and it's kind of interesting because, there are those short clips where there's a sailboat in there. And the sailboat in real life was actually a Westsail 32, which is the same boat that I have.
That's awesome.
That was the reason why I looked for those particular boats in the first place, was because in The Perfect Storm, in the reality of it, that boat, after the people got pulled off, that boat maintained itself. Yeah, and they were able to find it. It beached itself on the Jersey shore, and days later they hauled it off and sailed it right back into harbor.
That is amazing. Wow.
I hope they at least resold it for a discount or something.
Oh no, the guy kept it. Kept it. I actually did a podcast all about that one because there's conflicting reports about what actually went down on that sailboat compared to the book, and then what his son and the captain actually said. But we don't have to get into that. But it was
that's a different podcast.
Crazy.
That's
exactly.
Podcast. I thought that one was awesome because I went and looked at the sailing movies to compile my list after I read the book.
Yeah.
Right after I read Sailing into Oblivion. So here in my mind, I've seen Perfect Storm probably right when it first came out, and then a million times after that, because I just love that movie.
It's also one of those on TV all the time.
It is also one of those ones where TBS Superstation is like, every chance we get, we're going to show it. I didn't realize, though, obviously until after I read your book, that they set out from Gloucester.
Yep.
There are so many sailing movies that are about the men from Gloucester.
Yeah.
It is insane. And it's also awesome because so many of them are based on true stories. It's like, this is how amazing and incredibly dangerous life at sea is. We don't even have to make shit up.
Yeah.
We can just tell real life stories.
We got centuries of
disaster. And it's like,
there's a reason that was like the lead setting for like science fiction and fantasy for so long, is because
we just didn't understand it.
We still don't. I mean, now we're kind of looking more at space and stuff for fictional books, but the sea is still really largely unknown.
Yeah, and so I mean, with the Perfect Storm, we obviously so all three of us had the Perfect Storm, and you didn't even know what the list was.
I didn't. No,
didn't even know what the list was. All right, well, okay, crap. Let me just scratch that one off.
No, I guess I'll do the same. There we go.
Yeah, we can.
Sorry, guys.
We love Perfect Storm. And the rewatching the movie as well, it was interesting that you brought up the sailboat was the same, because when I was sitting and watching The Perfect Storm with my friend, I was like, that right there, I bet that's a 32 foot sloop, and that's what Jerome was on.
Yep.
Boom, and you came right in and said it, and I was like, yes, I recognize it already. And part of it was from watching your videos on YouTube, some of the boat tour videos. Help me really place the space that you're dealing with in this 271 days too. So then when I see them moving around on the deck, it was like, like the visual space seemed very familiar, even though it seemed like their boat wasn't from the 70s, right? Their boat seemed like a little newer one.
Well, they were all built back in the 70s. I think the last one was built maybe in 80 or something, because the company ended up going bankrupt like most boat builders do. But they took a Westsail, and I think they had to cut it in half and expand the cabin, the down below stuff, so that they could actually film in there. So the interior shots are a little not really correct as far as the spacing, but the exterior stuff, that's a Westsail 32, and
sweet.
It's pretty cool.
Nice. Yeah, it was just cool. It made me feel like I knew something about sailing, because I was able to identify, pick out a boat like, I know the approximate size of that. Yeah. Okay. Well, for my next one, I guess I'll switch us up from movies. I have 2 TV shows on my list. The first one is Black Sails.
Okay.
2014 to 2017. It's a zesty 4-season prequel to R.L. Stevenson's Treasure Island that semi-accurately portrays the golden age of piracy as it's centered around Nassau. It's definitely my favorite show as far as pirates. I also haven't seen like a pirate movie that's touched just how dramatic it is. I mean, it's the equivalent of Game of Thrones minus season 8 for what Game of Thrones did for fantasy television, in how it made it so epic and dramatic. Black Sails did the same thing, and because we are sort of exploring the golden age of piracy through the eyes of fictional characters, we're able to see these semi-realistic historical events going down.
Yeah. And
we know what is fiction because it's obviously R.L. Stevenson's characters that are the fiction part of it. And that was what was really cool about that one for me.
Yeah.
That was definitely, after Perfect Storm, definitely one of my number ones up there. So yeah, I guess with that Black Sails. Have you seen Black Sails?
It's on my to watch list for the Rona reviews. I haven't gotten to it yet.
Oh,
I have got like 4 pages worth of.
I say it's zesty because it was way ahead of its time in 2014.
Mhm.
You know, we've got a by Captain Flint. You know, it's pretty zesty. It's pretty zesty. Have you seen Black Sails, Jerome?
No, I was just gonna say I've heard of it, but no, unfortunately, I haven't seen it yet. But I too will probably put that on my to-do list and at least check it out. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
If you like pirates, then I can almost guarantee you'll enjoy this show. Did you like Game of Thrones?
I hate to admit it, but I never saw that either. One of the things before you freak out, because I know that's a pretty uncommon thing.
No, it's not.
But because I live on a boat, a lot of times I just don't have access to internet and all that.
Right.
And it's basically sort of I'm living in the 1980s permanently for some reason.
No,
Nothing wrong with
totally
that.
get, you know, and you're speaking to a couple of guys that are nonconformist in very, very similar ways. So even though we've seen Game of Thrones, there's plenty of things that we haven't seen that we probably should have.
Yeah, I'm never gonna watch Squid Game
I know, which is unfortunate because I probably
or Tiger
should.
King or The
Okay.
Last Dance.
Or
Sorry, Netflix. It's not that I hate Netflix shows. Like I like Stranger Things and I like Lost in Space. I mean, there's ones I like.
Yeah.
I'd have no interest in those shows. I know every other sports fan in the world is like, why are you not watching the Michael Jordan thing? Because guys, I don't like Michael Jordan. Sorry.
You know, you're not. I think what Gary V doesn't like Michael Jordan
Yeah.
either. So
I think he's overrated. I mean, he's good at selling things. You know,
he's pretty
that's about
amazing
it.
on the basketball court. Again, another podcast.
Right. Sorry.
Isn't he really good at gambling as well? I think.
Yeah, he's really good at
Something like that.
gambling
Yeah.
as well and getting rules changed for his benefit. Yeah. All those things.
Oh, man.
Well, with that,
I went there.
brings
Can I-
us to
Does that
Jerome's
lead me
report.
into me? All
Yeah,
right.
sure does.
Yeah.
Under, I guess, the same genre as Black Sails, as far as movies go, Master and Commander, the golden age of sail, the British fighting the Spanish, and they're out there and they're battling. And it's really based off of, I believe it's Patrick O'Brien's book series. He wrote like 20 or 30 books all about like Jack Aubrey and the golden age of sailing and all that, and really factual books. As far as the stories were all made up, but the setting and the terminology and the working of the ships was always pretty spot on. He knew his stuff. And so that movie sort of exemplified that, because when you're watching it, you're seeing pretty well what a good example of what it would have been like to be on one of those working warships or man of warships. And I don't know, that I just love seeing just the grit and the gore when they have the battles, and they really brought to life, I think, the fact that, you know, you might not get hit by a cannonball, but the 1,000 pieces of wood,
Yeah.
shrapnel spraying everywhere, and people's arms are coming off, and oh my gosh, I mean, and it also just, I think it pulls out a really nice story as far as these guys adventuring and going around Cape Horn, and I don't know, it really was a great tale that I think showed what life was like to try and live out at sea on these ships out there back in that day.
Yeah, and so with Master and Commander, that's one of those ones that's always been on my list of to watch.
Yeah.
That then ends up getting bumped down,
But
every
never at
time
the top.
But it's never at the top of the list, so I never quite make it. That one, I mean, because I love Russell Crowe, so there's that. With Master and Commander, so when I see movies or TV shows that essentially take place on those old ships, I wonder if they use an old ship for the movie, or if it ends up being CGI, or if it's if it's staged, or if they're actually out on the open sea in one of these large old ships.
Well, I know that for a lot of the stuff in Pirates of the Caribbean, they were using the Bounty, which was the actual ship that they used for the old movie, The Bounty, Mutiny on the Bounty, with Oh shoot, I can't remember his name. You know, the one back in like the 50s or 60s.
This is one I looked up.
Alec Guinness.
No. I can't believe I can't. He was in Apocalypse Now. He's the crazy one. They go at Marlon. Yes, thank you. But yeah, Marlon Brando. The studio had built that boat, the Bounty. They took it to Tahiti, and the intention was to burn it in the end for the final scene, sort of thing. And Marlon Brando wouldn't let him do it. He fell in love with the boat, so they had to build a whole nother boat, bring that out, and then the Bounty was doing all sorts of other movies, and then it was lost in Hurricane Sandy.
Oh wow!
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Wow. Nice.
That's a cool story.
Yeah, that's interesting. And
it sounds very Marlon Brando.
It just sounds
right.
Brando. It's like, no, I love this ship. You can't burn it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, cool. Master and Commander for number 2. I mean, for number 1 on your list, since you destroyed Perfect Storm for all of us, Josh. Well, go ahead, destroy another one. What else you got, Josh?
Jaws, 1975.
Nice.
I avoided that one on purpose.
Yeah, I figured you would avoid that one, which is why I went ahead with it. Cautionary tale of politicians endangering their voters in favor of appearances and financial excess. Oh yeah, they kill a monster shark as well.
Yeah,
everyone knows that part. I remember finding it fast. The first time I watched it was 2020, maybe. I just remember finding it fascinating that like the whole time the politicians were just like, "Oh, nothing's wrong. You guys are all just a couple people got." Accidentally, it was just a random accident. They got eaten by a shark. You guys are fine, you know.
It is definitely an underlying story about the worst mayor in history.
Yes,
it's really close to being up there. Yeah,
but he is one of the best dressed because he wears that jacket with the little anchors all over it.
Yeah,
man, I would kill for that thing.
It's just like the sacrificing people he's been elected to serve in the interest. Jeez Louise, I'm being attacked by flies.
Well,
in the interest of in the interest of making all that sweet tourism money.
I know, yeah. Which was which is a ridiculous premise at the same time,
but so accurate.
It's very true to life, isn't it?
I was gonna say, Jaws was 75, right?
Yeah.
5 years before the 80s, where we were literally where everything was now marketable.
Yep.
Where everything is marketable. So it's right in time. It's just before the time where they
tried to warn us.
They tried to warn,
and we didn't listen.
It's coming.
Why didn't we listen?
It's just something we don't do well.
To me, that's the true horror of the movie, right there.
Horror. But yes, just the mayor.
Yeah.
That we didn't listen 5 years before it all started. All right. Well, then let's see. I guess I'm going to go ahead and go back. I'm going to go with Captain's Courageous from 1937. It was a black and white movie. They remade it.
Spencer Tracy, right?
For 1986. Yeah. So that
love Spencer Tracy. Sorry.
To me, first of all, another movie taking place about the men of Gloucester.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a Portuguese fisherman that's coming from a boat out of Gloucester. They're in the Great Banks when an ocean liner goes by and a bratty kid falls overboard, ends up on this fishing boat for the next 3 months and learns something about hard work and character and essentially falls in love with this crew. I won't spoil it, even though it was 1937. Everyone should have seen it just because it's on my list.
Yeah, right. Like anyone is aware movies existed before 1970.
Yeah. Like anyone. No, because they didn't, obviously.
Yeah.
So Captain's Courageous. I think that is the oldest movie I've ever had on any of our lists in almost 2 years of doing.
It's even older than when I did Mr. Smith Goes to Washington by 2 years.
It's even older than Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. So now I feel cultured.
Now I've got something to beat. I've watched older movies. I just haven't put them on a list yet.
Right.
Well, it must be holding up. I'll have to definitely put that one on my list. I haven't seen it before.
It's on HBO Max.
Well, they redid a 1996 version.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't nearly as well acted, and it also had about 20 minutes cut from the original, whereas the original was about 20 minutes longer. So the original was about 2 hours. The one that they redid in 1996 was like an hour and 25 minutes or something.
Right.
And so that one, like, I tried watching the newer one afterwards.
Don't do that.
And the old one is so much better. Yeah, it just reminded me of why I love old westerns.
I'm not one of those guys that's like every single remake is a horrible piece of crap, but I do think sometimes the era that something was filmed is part of what makes it so iconic, you know?
Yeah.
Like remaking Wizard of Oz today, like no one would care.
Yeah.
You know, like
Now, granted, the one disclaimer I will give is that because it is 1937, it is incredibly racist.
Yeah, you're always gonna find that with the older movies. It's like, whoa, that wouldn't cut it today. No way.
We have a very obvious American playing Portuguese man,
of course,
doing a really awful accent.
Right.
You've got one black man in the film, and he's the cook. And it wouldn't surprise
and it talks like this,
kind of.
Yeah,
with a little more southern drawl.
Yeah, well,
and he it wouldn't surprise me. You can just assume 1937 that he probably wasn't paid. And that,
or if he was, it was like
me.
very, very little.
Yeah, it just irks me. Which is, I'm guessing, probably why they remade the 1996 version, because they actually used non-white people for multiple roles in the new one.
And this again is another offshoot podcast, whatever, but like I just have to say this real quick. My whole thing with, and I get some people, the problem with woke / anti-woke is some people have like legitimate concerns about it, but I think people look at diversity in general sometimes and think that that's woke, and they're just like, why are my heroes not straight white males anymore? And it's like, because we've had 100 years of straight white male heroes.
Well, not only that, but if you just take a look at the past 70 years, look at all the accomplishments that have been performed by non-white males.
That's exactly what I'm saying. Like, so the whole idea of, and it's mostly known in like,
it's hard to make a basketball movie about a white basketball player when Michael Jordan stands out so
but
well.
They did. Hustle. Well, I guess he was foreign.
Hustle, that's different.
But he was white foreign.
Yeah. Okay, but Adam Sandler doing an amazing drama film is completely different than
it was a fantastic movie. I was actually really surprised at how much I liked it.
It's not like Air Bud.
It's not like Boogie.
It's not like Boogie. Yeah,
and Air Bud was a piece of classic art. All right. It was perfect.
I was waiting for garbage to come in there.
No.
Okay, nice.
I got us off track. I'm sorry.
No, you did. Yeah, but that was from. So okay. One more disclaimer about Captain's Courageous. It still made my list because even though you've got an obvious American trying to pretend to be a Portuguese, he was still one of the top-notch actors in the film. Like, it was still very good. Very good.
You're going to see that in a lot of those older films too. And I'm not saying you should ignore it, but you should also just be like, we've come far away from where we used to be. This is just how it used to be done. It's not right or wrong. It's just reality.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it didn't.
Mickey Rooney played a Chinese man.
It was very cringe at the beginning, but you very quickly forget about that and enjoy the movie.
Right.
It's just one of those things that because I haven't watched an old movie in a long time.
It was a little shocking. Yeah.
You forget how shocking.
Like, holy crap.
Like, holy crap. Like, why wouldn't we just hire a Portuguese person?
Yeah.
God. But yes. So Captain's Courageous, that would be my
second, technically.
Third, essentially, because Perfect Storm. Yeah.
You probably should have let me go first. All right.
No, but we're back to Jerome, right?
Yep, back to Jerome.
All right. So next on my list, and I was actually going in a descending. So I started with 5, and then I'm working my way up to my number 1. So just putting that out there. Gotcha. But the next one on mine is Adrift, which is a more recent movie for sure. And this one, it's sort of the old sailing story of a couple goes out. They're doing an ocean crossing, going across the Pacific from Tahiti to San Diego. Monster storm comes up. Boat gets absolutely wrecked and damaged. I don't want to spoil too much of it, but now this young lady is on this boat in the middle of the ocean and has to save herself. And it's the whole survival story based on, again, a true situation, which is phenomenal. But unlike a lot of movies, it's very typical for them to take a bunch of license and be like, all right, well, we got to add drama here. We got to add this. And I don't think they did too much of that, but yet they were able to weave in sort of this subplot, sort of sneaky, I don't know what you would call it, kind of like a twist that you don't realize until you actually watch the movie. And then you're like, oh my gosh. But they held to the truth. I watched a few of the interviews before we do the show with the actual woman who was in that situation. And yeah, she said it stuck to the truth really well. And she was very happy with how it came out. So fantastic. Keeps you on the edge of your seat. And then, I don't want, like I said, I don't want to spoil it, but it's worth watching. Holy cow. I loved it.
Sweet.
Yeah. Adrift. I ended up watching about half the movies that were on the list that you had sent me. Because when I had looked up, when I look up a top 25 sailing movies, it's just for reference, like as a place to start.
Yeah.
And then I it's like, okay, so what didn't make the list and why didn't it make the list?
Right.
And when I was reading about Adrift, I was like, wow. Because
crazy.
Another true story that was turned into a movie that is just amazing all by itself, because it's just the true story part of it is amazing, let alone the Hollywood license that they take, with the padded drama, which is, of course, is, we all know they're going to do it anyway.
You got to have a little of that for sure. But I think it's fantastic when you can watch a movie like that. It's based on a true story. And then you can go on to YouTube or on the internet and find pictures and videos and interviews. So, you really get that real life aspect of it. I mean, even to go back to The Perfect Storm for a second, you can actually see footage of the rescue of the sailboat on YouTube. It's really grainy because it was 91 when it happened, but the Coast Guard took film of it, and you can see the boat and the big waves and everything. It's
really cool. Yeah.
Yeah. It's real. It's like, again, all these true stories that get turned into film, they're both absolutely amazing because you take a look at how strong the human spirit is.
Yeah.
Right. In its survival instincts, but then also just how incredibly dangerous the ocean is. It's just, it's massive. And for whatever reason, I keep thinking of the SNL skit right now, where it's like the fish are drowning, right?
Yeah.
The fish are drowning. That's the problem. Yeah. All the fish are drowning because there's too much water. I thought you were
going to talk about the land shark skit from the original.
No, not land sharks. No. And Adrift is a great pick. Yeah, absolutely. And so, folks, if you haven't seen it, definitely go and watch it. Give it a watch. It's very good. And Josh, it brings us to your next one, right?
Yeah, my next Get to the Point review is Anaconda. Just kidding.
Ice Cube. I love it.
and J-Lo. Okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And J-Lo.
Jenny from the Block was in there too. No, actually, it was Pirate Radio in 2009. Awesome. Not so much about the sailing itself, but the whole thing takes place on a sailboat because they're traveling around. This is like during the time where they the British radio stations weren't allowing, or the British government weren't allowing radio stations to play like rock and roll and stuff in like the 70s, 80s, somewhere in that era.
International waters.
Yeah, so they went to international waters and they were avoiding the government and everything while they were rebelliously playing rock and roll music around the clock.
That's a really cool premise.
Yeah,
it's like Good Morning Vietnam on a sailboat.
Right. My review of it is Almost Famous, but on a boat. Fun comedy where a young man joins a live-in crew of radio hosts on a sailing station. One of Philip Seymour Hoffman's best works. He was amazing in that.
Yeah.
Oh man. Okay. And Philip Seymour Hoffman too. I haven't even heard of that movie.
Yeah.
Holy crap. And what year was that?
2009.
2009. I'm gonna have to check that out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great soundtrack as well.
Oh yeah, that too.
Of course.
Yeah.
That goes without saying, though.
Yeah, right. I know, Pirate Radio.
Classic rock. Yeah.
But yeah, so Pirate Radio is a really good movie.
Agreed. Yeah, obviously, since we're talking about it.
Yeah.
I loved it. Loved it.
That was my Get to the Point review on it.
I mean, I love Philip Seymour Hoffman, so I'm definitely gonna have to check it out.
Right. Yeah. No. And when I said best work ever, I wasn't trying to downplay his other jobs. I was just trying to, highlight how well he did in this movie, particularly.
Yeah.
It's hard to compete with Along Came Polly. You know, his work in that role was literally, I can't get over how good he is at just portraying these characters. He was absolutely amazing actor.
And then you have things like Almost Famous, where he's in one scene, but it is almost steals the whole movie.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a good one. Okay. Oh, wait, that brings it around to me, doesn't it?
It does.
Okay. All right. Well, we're going to go with my second TV show on here, which would be Vikings from 2013 to 2020.
Not Gilligan's Island?
Not Gilligan's Island. Okay. Although
technically they're on an island the whole time.
They're on an island the whole time. Yeah. They don't ever get to the sailing part because of darn Gilligan. Yeah. No, with Vikings though,
also on my to-watch list.
Also on your to-watch list. I didn't have a summarize it. I didn't have a summary for this one. I mean, it's
just Vikings.
I just picture, you know, if you don't know, when you watch the show, you will know that a large part of downtime in Viking culture was just braiding each other's hair because they all look amazing every single time they're on screen.
It's a time-consuming process.
But yeah, so I just picture a bunch of Vikings braiding each other's hair.
Are they just like sitting behind each other like a row of monkeys picking hair out of it?
Maybe no,
it's but they're braiding hair.
Yeah, they're braiding hair. Yeah, because they all look fantastic on screen all the time.
I mean, I'd be okay with that. That's probably why the boats were designed the way they were.
But you know, the series kind of follows Ragnar Lothbrok. Which is a famous Viking who was technically the first one to navigate, or he made the word I'm pulling is evolutions. That's not what I'm looking for.
Expeditions.
But he made expeditions, some of the first expeditions all the way over to England, and that was huge considering how much sea they were crossing. And without the same tools of navigation that we eventually had in, 1500s.
Yeah.
So like it's significant in that it historically it portrays Vikings semi-accurately, right? As far as the way things sort of unfolded. But naturally the drama is very Hollywoodized.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I admit I was more excited about that than Black Sails, but I'm actually excited about both now that I've heard you kind of give your idea on Black Sails.
And this is the thing between Black Sails and Vikings. As much as I love Black Sails, beats it every time.
Okay,
like Black Sails is just that good.
All right,
it's you end up falling in love with the characters or hating them, loving to hate them, kind of thing. Whereas in Vikings, it's part of the mysticism keeps you enveloped, and History Channel did a really great job of putting together the Vikings series, which is why it spawned other Vikings series.
like spinoffs.
Yeah, Valhalla.
It's like Sons of Anarchy on water.
It's like Sons of Anarchy on water. It's kind of exactly what it is, really.
Right.
It's pretty much exactly what it is, and yeah, with that'd be number 4 on my list.
Sweet.
Yeah, definitely Vikings. Have you seen Vikings, Jerome?
No, I haven't, but I'll add that to the list for sure. This is good. I'm getting some good info on what to see.
Next time you circumnavigate the sea, just get yourself a DVD player and a bunch of.
They don't do very well.
Yeah, I'm about to say probably not.
Imagine so. And this is where like one of these like technical questions is like so. Sea, it sounds to me like salt water is so much more it deteriorates
corrosive
things. Yeah, much more corrosive. Thank you for the word.
Absolutely.
You're welcome. I hate it when I especially having a big vocabulary. It's like, why am I just blanking on this word?
Yeah, corrosive. Come on now. You were in science once upon a time. So Vikings. And Jerome, numero 4, yes.
Okay, so the next one on my list is another based on factual events, and it's called The Mercy. And this is a retelling of a story where it's not always the weather that you have to watch out for on the ocean. Sometimes it's right inside of your head. A solo sailor sets off, joins a race. He's alone on his boat. He's got a lot of pressure from home. Gets out there, the boat's not doing all that well, and he concocts a plan to be able to figure out a way to at least complete the course around the entire world, something I know a little bit about, and the pressures of his lies and his deceit and the boat and the ocean drive him absolutely crazy. And I don't want to spoil it, but things do not go well in the end. But it's a glimpse into, I guess, sea madness, how being alone on the ocean for months and months can actually drive a person to past the breaking point.
Just judging by your explanation of it, I feel like it starred Casey Affleck. I'm probably wrong, but
he would have been great. No, it was Colin Firth. I think that's how you
Oh, okay. Well, that's a good one too.
Nice.
Yeah. And it basically, you know, the background of the actual race was 1968 and 69. They put on a race to see if it was possible for a human to sail alone without stopping around the world.
They should just asked you.
Well, I didn't, you know, I was following in their footsteps 50 years later, but 9 sailors set out on their boats and only one actually completed the course. One went kind of crazy and kept doing another half a lap around the planet. And then this gentleman, Donald Crowhurst, he was the one that this movie is based on. And
I wonder if that inspired a little bit of Stephen King's The Long Walk book. It's one of his lesser known books, but it's basically like every year America has like a walking competition where you walk across the United States, and like the winner becomes like, I don't remember what the prize was, but it was something that obviously, and I think it was like 2 people from every state got to enter or whatever, or I might be mixing that up with the Hunger Games. But anyway, a lot of people do it. And like the main character ends up winning. And spoiler alert, I guess, but this book is written in the 70s, so get over it. So the main character, after he ends up winning, has like completely lost any sight of anything. It just keeps walking, doesn't even stop, just keeps walking.
Yeah, interesting.
And it's like kind of reminded me of that when you said the guy that kept sailing another halfway around the world. Yeah. I mean, you know, I can, especially after reading your book, Jerome, I can picture the like 271 days at sea, you come into port, and that's just foreign now. It's right.
Like, as much as you were looking forward to like finishing, you know, and it's like, there, we did it. Still, that would just feel so foreign after being on the boat for forever. And I get it.
Yeah. How long after you got off the boat did it take for your legs to get used to like solid ground again?
Oh, I was bumping into things and almost falling down anytime I got in a shower for about 2 weeks or so.
I bet. Yeah.
It takes a while.
I was on a rope bridge at the zoo the other day, and it took me a couple seconds to recover from it. I was like I wasn't like falling down drunkenly, but like I could feel like my legs were just kind of like, wait, what's going on?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what made me think of that. I was like, I wonder like how long that would have. That's crazy. Yeah. Cause like I've been on is a cruise ship, and even that was like probably 20 minutes to try to adjust, right?
Yeah, and you know, it's both different and a similar sensation as when you've been on. Jerome, I'm a professional roller skater, so I you know, if you spend hours and hours on roller skates where you are used to rolling, and then you take off your roller skates and you're walking around, that's this sensation when you're expecting to roll.
Yeah, I feel the same way after getting off the treadmill.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Like if you're on the treadmill for a while, and all of a sudden you're just like, whoa, okay, hold on.
Yes. It's the exact same sensation. Yeah. And sometimes with skating, it can last a little longer.
I bet.
But that's only, you know, it's interesting. I still remember that sensation. I haven't had it for forever though. You know,
I mean, your body probably eventually adjusts.
But all the way up into my teenage years, after I finished skating, take off my skates, put my shoes on, I have that light in your legs and feet feeling that you'd be used to.
Well, I went through a pretty bad storm 2 years ago on the coast of South Carolina, and got through it, pulled into this little marina and everything. And I'd been in the storm for about 2 days. And I mean, we're big waves and the boats get knocked around. And when I went to go and check in, I physically had to hold on to the countertop because I was physically swaying, and it was the most violent I'd ever felt. Where I couldn't even take a shower. I would have fallen down for sure.
Right. I was because your legs are busy trying to balance against something that wasn't
there. Yeah, exactly.
There,
yeah. Wow. I guess that brings us around to
Me again.
Does it?
He just
yeah.
went.
Yeah. Yes.
He can go get it if he wants. So
He can go. We stole Perfect Storm, so
to continue your movies based on real events, my next Get to the Point review is Moana, 2016.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Teenage princess has to sail the seas to recruit a disgraced demigod in her mission to save the ocean itself. I thought it had beautiful visuals and obviously the soundtrack, Lin-Manuel. And in classic Disney fashion, we even get a tripped out scene featuring an overgrown interdimensional crab.
It's just funny because I didn't even consider Moana.
She literally is sailing the entire
She is
movie.
literally-
Yeah, right. I didn't even think about it.
It took me a
either.
second to think about it when I was thinking about them too. I was like, oh yeah.
I think it's because when I'm looking at these lists of top sailing movies, one, Moana's not on there, and two,
Should be.
there's so many that are based on true stories,
Right.
Amazing stories.
Yeah. And in case you guys didn't pick up, I was not being serious. It's not based on a true story. I'm just letting our audience know.
Oh, Moana's not?
Yeah.
Oh, all right.
Well, Moana was an actual person,
It's
but
less-
the story itself is not really based on
I
anything.
gotta say, it's a little less impactful now.
Yeah,
that I
a little
know it's
less.
Not, it's not. a
Yeah, like,
documentary.
oh,
she
man.
did it. She didn't pull up the rock to help her save Tahiti. Okay.
Well, one of the things that I noticed in that, it's very rare for any sort of sailing movie, whether it's CGI or animation or real life, is to get the sort of open ocean color
Yes.
of the sea, and they nailed it on
They
that
did.
one. Holy cow.
When they weren't trying to make it like the living part of the ocean, when it
Yeah.
was just the ocean, it was beautiful and gorgeous. And my wife was obsessed with it because we watched it not too long after we went on our cruise, and it reminded her so much of when we were on the open ocean, like how it looked.
Yeah, you have to get really far from land before it takes on that royal blue sort of
Yeah.
color. But holy cow, I mean, it's just bright
Gorgeous.
blue.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
Huh. So kind of like the image that we have behind you, huh?
Yeah, that
Royal
picture
blue.
is taken I think in the middle of the South Atlantic Ocean.
Oh, that's
so-
not behind you right now. That's a picture.
No.
You're not just. You haven't noticed that there's no sway in his. It's not like.
Well, I
he's
just
rocking
figured-
back and forth.
I just figured the camera was counter swaying.
Yeah, right.
Oh yeah. Oh,
I've got a
gimbals
computer
nowadays.
on a gimbal.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, gimbals nowadays, they're just amazing. Yeah, that makes me think there was a movie. Right now, I can't remember for the life of me what it was called, but it was about a woman who went solo sailing. She was heading on her way to Ascension Island. She comes across a ship that has a bunch of refugees on it. Coast Guard tells her not to do anything, and she doesn't listen to them because they don't show up for like 2 or 3 days. And so eventually she forces herself to help. I noticed something on the inside of that the gimbal is what made me think of this, is the her oven. It was on hinges so that as the boat moved, it stayed. It just never occurred to me that I was like, that's a fucking great idea. That's a great idea. Like, of course it is, because otherwise every single time you sway, everything falls off.
Yeah.
Like I mean, I'm sure it's very basic for anyone who's been sailing, but that was, to me, was just like, yes, what genius.
Yeah. I really love subtle details like that.
Yeah, what genius put the stove on hinges?
I call them subtle because they're things that, like, you and I, being land lovers, we wouldn't
had
get,
no
right? We
idea.
wouldn't even think about the idea that if you're at a bad enough, turbulence or whatever, that something that's heavy as like an oven would probably start crashing through your wall.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
So,
sliding around.
yeah.
Well, and you have to, you can be in rough weather for days on end, and you
Yeah.
still have to cook food and
Yes.
make
Mhm.
coffee and all that, and that's where you got to do it. It
Have
is.
to
You
make
have-
the coffee.
Oh, absolutely. Holy cow!
Cheers for that.
Cheers.
On that note, have you got?
Oh, you
some
got one
coffee?
too? Oh, there we go.
Nice. And of course, I had to spill it on my Z-South shirt.
Yeah, that's not nearly as cool.
It's a drinking
It's
problem.
It's cool.
It's your turn.
It is my turn. This will be
Yes.
number 5 for me, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
You tell me.
Well, I mean, because
I've
Perfect
got one
Storm.
left. So
'cause
yeah.
Perfect- Okay, gotcha.
I've got
Okay.
one left too.
Okay, all right. Well, then I'll go ahead and give my last one here. My last one Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou. Yeah, Zissou. Because I mean, it's just great. It's
Bill Murray.
It's Bill Murray. You can't. It's Bill. Say his middle name correctly. It's Bill fucking Murray.
Bill fucking Murray.
It's Bill fucking Murray, man. Yeah, he's just great, and nothing really beats that. You know, the only one who could have played that role just as well in the Life Aquatic is Shia LaBeouf.
You talking about Bill Murray's role, or
Yeah,
the
Bill Murray's
son?
role. Bill Murray's role in Life Aquatic is
Interesting.
Is Shia LaBeouf.
Okay.
Because I picture that slow clapping theater with the serious
Yeah,
face,
yeah.
matching Bill Murray's like
I'm not,
whole thing.
and I know like this is gonna get me excommunicated from movie fandom, but I'm not a huge fan of Wes Anderson films in general. I love
It's
Steve
an acquired
Zissou
taste.
though. Yeah,
You got me back. I don't know what happened.
He's back. I don't know what happened either. That was
Zoom
weird.
cut me off before I could talk about not liking Wes Anderson.
Yeah, they were like, whoa. This is gonna alienate the
Yeah,
whole-
right.
the tens of people that watch your
Yeah,
show.
yeah.
You just lost half of them. All
They're
right, the whole-
listening to us.
Oh, listening. Yeah.
Okay, are we recording
But
again?
no, yeah, we are. We were still recording.
Oh,
It
okay,
just dropped out.
I got you.
But it's an acquired taste. Like for instance, the very first time I watched Bottle Rocket, I didn't get it.
Yeah,
Didn't
me
get it.
neither.
I-
No way.
Like
Didn't get it.
I understand the humor and it's funny in parts. I just feel like sometimes the absurdity overshadows any actual story, and it's hard for me to get behind that.
See, and and that's one of those things that you just have, again, acquired taste.
Yeah.
You have to accept that about Wes Anderson films,
Right.
and, like when I think of my favorite joke in the Royal Tenenbaums is Gwyneth Paltrow smoking her whole life in the bathroom and no one knew about it. Like, and it's absurd, but it's also just a small joke. It's like 10 seconds of the whole movie, and it's just
And they do a lot of that, and it's kind of like sometimes it feels out of left field. But like again, I know what to expect from a Wes Anderson film, so I always see it coming. So it's not like, I don't know, maybe it doesn't have the same effect on me. I don't know, but like, because we just watched the Grand Budapest Hotel recently too for the first time.
Oh, that's a great one.
And there are funny parts, and again, the other thing is that's frustrating to me about not loving Wes Anderson films is that he always has such a great cast. Like his core group of actors are fantastic.
Well, and not only that, but the films are so stylized too.
And they're very
Yeah.
stylized.
The fact
Yeah.
that it's what's amazing to me about Wes Anderson films is that he never compromises his artistic integrity.
And for that
when he's moving
reason,
forward in film.
and for that reason, I respect the hell out of him.
Yeah.
It's just not for me. But I love Steve Zissou. And especially Willem Dafoe. Sorry.
Oh gosh.
Oh my gosh.
Willem
Willem,
in the body.
In the bodysuit? Yeah, man. Oh boy. He's a treasure, man. William
He
Dafoe.
is.
Talk about
Oh,
underrated
yeah.
actors.
See, and I don't even know if you can say he's underrated anymore.
I can.
Maybe in the early 2000s we would have been able to call him underrated. But
I mean-
nowadays, like, man, I feel like everything he does just
He
explodes.
never
It's
phones it in.
amazing. He does.
There's a
it doesn't
lot of
matter
great
what it
actors.
is.
Yeah, there's a lot of great actors, and like this is to me is like what separates like, and I can recognize greatness in everybody, but like I know I've bitched before about like Marlon Brando, because he got lazy and he started phoning in performances, and who knows how much of that was mental, whatever, but. It's just like, to me, it's the fact that I know he could have done better and he didn't. And I kind of feel the same way about Johnny Depp, which don't kill me. But, since he was Jack Sparrow, that's pretty much been the only character he's ever played.
Right. You guys I'm sorry. This must be on my end.
Like,
It must be.
If I'm
It's no
offending
big
you
deal.
talking about Johnny Depp, you can
No.
just tell me.
Not in the least. Oh man. Well, I mean, truth be told, I'm in the boatyard that I work. I'm in their office. Normally I got full bars on the old internet, but who knows? This computer has been out at sea for 10, 12 months at a time. So
Yeah.
it could be but I'm sure it's on my end. So sorry about that.
you're
That'll
fine.
add to the editing time, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Not nearly as much as you think.
Not as much as you think.
I'm pretty good at it by now. Yeah.
Nice.
But yeah, so we'll cut the rant. I won't go on a rant now. But so.
Oh no, please go
no,
on
no,
the
we
rant.
cut the Johnny Depp
Well,
rant. This
I've
is
lost
perfect.
I've lost the momentum
The
at this
flow,
point.
right,
so
right.
I'd have to build myself back up, and that would be a whole thing.
Yeah.
But no, so like, what about like people like Willem Dafoe or even Robert Downey Jr., people like that? If you could say, oh well, maybe they don't always make the greatest movies. They don't ever phone it in. Christopher Walken's another one, I think. But and there's a lot of like great actors who are considered the greatest of all time, but I feel like they do phone it in sometimes. Yeah. That's all I was saying. I think Willem Dafoe, I've never seen him in a role where I was like, he did not put his all into it.
Well, I also think of it as when as an actor, I've been cast for plenty of things that I just wasn't excited about the project.
And I get that. And, I totally understand that.
Trying to pull in that the passion for filmmaking when it's something that you just don't care about is really tough.
Oh, he's still there. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
He just blinked out for a second.
Yeah, I ended up undoing the little internet connection thing just to see if that'll do it. Maybe, do you think I should real quick just restart my laptop and then click back in? That might help. After
this recording session, if you want to do that, that's fine.
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
We'll be happy to wait. Yeah, let's wait. So then Steve Azizao, that's my last one.
That's your last one? So it's Jerome's turn?
Yes, it is.
All right. So this is my last one. And I guess before I get into the title of this one, I have to say I lived and worked in the Caribbean for about 10 years of my life. It was absolutely phenomenal. But some of the characters that you run into down there are exceptional people, to say the least. And the movie Captain Ron, while a comedy and, sort of a fictional story, absolutely nails the character of not only Marty Short's, dream of sailing off into the Caribbean with his family, even though he knows jack about any of it. But the Captain Ron, this guy's down there in the Caribbean. He's got the bravado, but he's a bonehead. And they all get linked together and all learn from each other. And it's a great tale of adventure and fun. But I have seen that story play out so many times. And I know so many people like Captain Ron. And I probably have exuded that a little bit myself while I was down there in some ways. But it's not only is it just hilarious, but it's got a great plot. It's got great sailing. Obviously, Kurt Russell, Marty Short, like you just can't get any better. It's hilarious. And for me, I've watched it 1,000 times. I'll admit that freely right now.
I know I've watched it about a half a dozen times. I guess every time I've watched it, I've never paid attention to the sailing part. It's always just Martin Short. And yeah, like that's always just been my
Oh, when he gets hit by the boom and you just hear it over and over again. Oh, man overboard. Give me another brewski there, Swab.
Yeah,
and so good.
And the funniest part about that is that he just says it like it happens all the time.
Yeah.
Oh, man overboard.
Oh, absolutely. No, Oh, yeah. Well, it does. It just happens. And he's so casual. And that's one of the things that sort of like a great captain has to be, is even in emergency situations, they've got to be calm, cool, and collective. And so you got Captain Ron who does that, but then he also, throws the anchor overboard without having it tied off, and zip goes down, and then decides to tape bricks to the little kid's feet to go and get that thing. And it's like, I don't know. It hands down one of my favorite sailing movies of all time.
And you saved that one for your last one because it's just like your favorite. Yeah.
Well, it's just, and that whole idea of the guy inherits an old boat and he's got this picture of the boat when it's pristine. And then they show up down in the Caribbean and it's an absolute tub. I've seen that happen a lot. I've seen people buy boats and come up to the boatyard and they get a first glance at it and they're like, that doesn't look like the same boat. And
yeah.
So I don't know. There's a reality to that story that I think is pretty interesting if you know what to look for. So I really, really enjoy it. And it's just funny. Really funny movie.
Yeah, that's great. Awesome. Nice. And that brings you to your last one then, right?
So speaking of greatest sailing movies ever, my last Get to the Point review is on Muppet Treasure Island, 1996.
Okay.
Have you seen that one?
I'm positive that I have.
Yeah.
I'm
Tim
still,
Curry was Long
my
John.
brain is still trying to process that made your list.
Yeah, I know.
Go on. Yeah, Muppets movie. Okay, yeah, I'm on board.
And you know what? Don't be knocking on the Muppets, all right? Unless it's Muppets in space. In which case you can knock on it all you want. So Tim Curry leads a crew of Muppets to the fabled Treasure Island. Sincerely, one of my favorite iterations of this classic tale. Really need to get back on movie adaptations featuring the Muppets themselves, because I feel like my favorite Muppet movies are that one and Muppet Christmas Carol.
I definitely enjoyed Muppet Christmas Carol. They did a great job with that one.
And I think it's just Tim Curry. I just love Tim Curry. I don't even remember the Muppets in it, honestly. I just remember him.
He's amazing. All right. Well,
yeah, I was joking when I said it was the best movie ever.
but definitely worthy of the list. Again, it just didn't even occur to me, and not only that, but it wasn't on any of the lists.
Well, I really wanted a Treasure Island movie because I love the story so much.
Yeah,
but I haven't seen any other versions of Treasure Island except for Treasure Planet, which I cut out because it's in space.
Right,
it's not on the ocean.
It's not aquatic. Yeah. Yeah, well, and see, that's HBO did a 2-part special with Eddie Izzard where they did.
Yeah,
Treasure Island.
I've seen that. Yeah, I've not seen the thing, but
that one was really good.
Yeah, I know there's like a whole bunch like in the 30s with Wallace Beery, who I'm the only person in the world that knows. But yours is like who?
I don't know what that is. No, I concur. I was like, you're probably the only one in this room.
I'm a big stickler for movies in like the 30s. I don't know why.
You haven't seen Captain's Courageous.
I haven't. But I saw it on HBO Max the other day when I was going through it, and I was like, oh, I should watch. Like I said, part of it is it's hard because most of the time my wife's with me, so it's like, what does she feel like watching?
Right,
and she's usually like popcorn movies, so it's like,
yeah, I get it.
Anything before like 95, she's like, I'm not really interested.
Oh, there's so many good classics back there.
I'll get her there.
Yeah,
I'm working on it.
Start with the Hitchcock stuff. That's usually pretty good.
I showed her The Shining the other day, which was I think it was a good older movie, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So
that is.
Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, 12 Angry Men. I've shown her those, but
right. Well, so the with us all having our list finished,
yes,
this brings us to the interview part, which I just like to preface by saying again, we both really enjoyed the book. It was great.
Thank you.
And also the way that I had come across to this, the whole reason this podcast came about is I was watching Black Sails, okay, and there's a part where they are becalmed for 21 days in the Sargasso Sea, and I was like, is that plausible? Is it plausible to experience a becalm that lasts that long? And so I started looking it up. What's that?
Sorry, that phone. I can't like cut it off because it's the business line.
Oh, you're fine.
Oh no, you're fine.
Okay, cool.
It's very minimal in the background. No biggie at all. But like when I was watching Black Sails, I wondered how long can you really experience a becalm, right? Where it's just no wind, whatever at sea. So I start looking it up on YouTube, and I come across this. I've been becalmed for 5 days video. I think it was 5 days.
Yeah.
I watch it, and here you are talking into the camera, and I'm like, what's this guy doing? I go to your channel, I read about the journey. I'm like, oh wow, all right, well, business email. Like I want to know, and boom, there you go. All because I was watching Black Sails and wanted to know how long you could be becalmed, essentially.
You'd be surprised how many of his stories start with because while I was watching Black Sails.
Yeah, because you've heard that a million times. That's not an explanation you've heard. But so, as a sort of just a toss-up, warm-up question about the book, is it safe to say that you're not a flat earther?
That is definitely safe to say. I'm 100% guarantee this planet is round. You can actually see it. I see it all the time when ships come over the horizon because they basically rise over it. And And to even get more technical, I can see them on one of my electronic devices called an AIS, and I can see them say 12 miles away, like a big oil tanker, and I can't see it from the horizon of the boat. But if I climb up my mast, then I can see it, from 40 feet up. And so I really get to know the curvature of our planet. So unfortunately, or fortunately, I should say,
unfortunately.
Yeah, we are on a round ball for sure.
Then that concludes our interview.
Yeah, we're done.
Right. All right,
that's all we had. We really
Yeah.
thought you were going to go with the flat Earth angle,
We figured
and
you were going to confirm our theories. No,
now I see you're just part of the conspiracy.
Yeah, right. I'm in there with the NASA guys. We all get our check. It's great.
Yeah, it's just part of the conspiracy. Oh, great. And I have a very long, involved list of questions. So why don't you, I got us warmed up with a obvious one.
So I only got like 3, and one of them is really more of a statement. Well, I guess there's a question in there, but well, because I was gonna say, what gave you the idea to go through your book by chapters and kind of enter in little bits that were like from your personal daily log, and how did you decide how you're going to I guess situate it so that it almost lined up really well situationally with your overarching story, if that makes any sense?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. I appreciate that one, because it was a sort of a risk that I took, because obviously there are a few people out there who have read it and they get lost in it. They're like, what the heck? I don't understand. But when I
watched all 6 seasons of Lost, so I get the skipping through the time.
Right. Well, and that was sort of part of the thing, was I wanted to do something a little different. Every other round the world sailing book, and there's only maybe a dozen or so, because obviously not many people do this, but they're all written the exact same way, start to finish. And sailing around the world is kind of a typically boring thing for the vast majority of it. And I wanted to sort of be able to kind of hop back and forth a little bit. And I really wanted to start out in a way that sort of relayed the danger and the really being in a pretty ugly, bad place, and start out to try and capture the reader. And then, I wanted it all. I wanted it to sort of build up and build up and build up until I was back into a semi-safe place. And that's where the two stories sort of come back together. But in essence, it was my attempt, as well as having short chapters, on making a sailing book that's not really difficult to get through, because even me reading them and having a real true interest in them, I find a lot of the sailing books to be like I'm falling asleep with them, Right.
And more to your point, I think it's because of the way people write it, linearly, because again, even in your book, there were plenty of times where you were becalmed for multiple days that you wrote about. And I feel like if somebody had just read it straight through, you would have had that issue. But I was going to say, I really appreciated the way you split it up, because it was nice seeing kind of in the moment reaction, as opposed to kind of I'm reminiscing about what happened.
Exactly. Well, and that was part of it as well, is just trying to give everybody a taste, because those entries are straight out of my ship's log, my journal. And I mean, besides cleaning up the spelling, I suppose it's right out of verbatim, me sitting in my bunk. And I wanted people to be able to picture that. I'm in my bunk and I've got this little light. And I'm trying to write away.
I imagined you had a desk, but with a little
that
quill
too.
pen.
Yep. Yeah. Right.
Well, because salt water doesn't affect ink at all.
No.
That's great. No, that's great. That was one of my questions. I was going to say it's not in chronological order, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Well, and I don't know if he does it in the audio version. Like, does he read off like the dates or how many days at sea during? Okay,
absolutely.
All right.
Yeah, sure does.
So I thought that was pretty. I thought that made it easy to follow, but I guess some people just can't.
It at all wasn't difficult to follow.
Right.
That was one. Like, I had 1.5 million technical questions while I was reading it, because I know nothing about sailing. But that all very quickly came together, both between just research and watching your videos. Like one of my biggest questions right from the go was, what's Mongo? And so now before you tell us, from what I understand, it essentially holds the rudder, right? It holds the rudder still, so you don't have to be constantly steering.
Yeah, it's what's called a self-steering wind vane, and the design is about 50 years old, and they're really beefy. The one that I have is an Aries, and it's really known for just being way overbuilt, having as few parts as possible, but essentially with a little blade up in the wind, if it tilts one way or the other, it'll actually steer the boat. So that keeps you going on a certain direction as long as the wind stays the same. And there were plenty of times where I was asleep and the wind shifts and then the boat turns as well. And I wake up going the wrong direction. Luckily, it doesn't happen that often.
Right.
But I named him after that character in Blazing Saddles.
Yeah, that's
Mongo,
what I was thinking the whole time.
Okay.
Mongo is the big, heavy guy back there, and just works. Yeah, because that tiller on my boat on the Westsail is very difficult to actually hand steer the boat is exhausting, and I luckily barely ever had to do that. But yeah, he's putting his work in, old Mongo back there.
Yeah, that's awesome. That would also explain why looking up Mongo never brought up an explanation as to what the card is. Because you named it Mongo. You named it Mongo. It's not it's not like, oh, I'm going to go buy a Mongo. No, that's not the exact.
No.
That's literally your name for it. That's why.
I'll make a note on that. Maybe I should do a little explanation in that one.
Mongo. I thought you had. Maybe I just put two and two together. I don't know. But
I'm dense.
Okay.
Sometimes.
Well, and if you're listening to it too, it's really easy to just kind of, not even acknowledge that if you're doing something else or whatever. I get that.
Okay, here's a really easy one. I think I've figured this out now, but I wrote it down like it was one of the very first questions I wrote down when I was listening to the book. So before you answer, from what I gathered, a takedown is when you're pulling the sails down. Yes?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Well, then I don't need to ask you what is a takedown.
That one's good. Let's cross that off.
Let's cross that one off the tomb. Okay. Is the Mighty Sparrow made primarily of wood, metal, or fiberglass?
She's an all fiberglass boat. No, not even a wood core. After the 1970s, they started to put like wood in between, sandwiching it in between fiberglass to lighten the boats up so they go faster. But it also makes them less durable when they're getting beaten down by heavy weather. And so a boat like mine, even though it's almost 50 years old, is going to stand a much better chance in a really bad, like a hurricane, than most modern boats today, because they were overbuilt completely. And so yeah, that fiberglass is absolutely crazy thick on our boat.
I would imagine part of it too is at the time they were built for people to actually go out and be on them, as opposed to just for someone to have like a weekend getaway. I feel like more are built today, just kind of like a luxury, leisurely sort of thing.
The idea of the Westsail was to purchase a boat that could take you anywhere on the world you wanted to go. And they call it the boat that launched 1,000 dreams. And it really had, because the vast majority of them are still out there plying the oceans as we speak.
Which is probably ironically why the people that made it went out of business, because there was no repeat customers.
Yeah, right. Well, it's actually interesting. So, in the middle of the 70s, one of the things that was happening was the oil crisis, and fiberglass boats are essentially made out of oil. It's resin. And one of the things that happened, they took pre-orders for these boats. They were selling them for about 25 grand a pop. But then all of a sudden the price of resin went through the roof.
Right.
They already contracted out so many of them, and they kept building them instead of declaring bankruptcy. And so they built them and lost money until they finally went under. But they produced about 1,100 or so, I think, in the line. And there's probably just under 1,000 that are still out there.
When it comes down to the way that we look at business today, every business on the Fortune 500 and everything else is to constantly turn more profit the next year than you did the year before.
Yes.
But to have a company that was obviously more concerned about a quality product, And so went break like.
I hate that.
What an admirable company. Admirable company.
No, I love the company. I hate that them being admirable was ultimately their downfall.
But but just think about if they had compromised what they were doing before.
Mhm.
I mean, we'll have more than 1,100 boats, but they might be overly priced, or
and they wouldn't still be on the water, probably.
Maybe, yeah. I
mean, they definitely wouldn't have this legendary status that they have, and I mean, I guess in the whole capitalistic thing, that takes second place to a profit or keeping the business alive. But in my book, having that legend and becoming a cult classic boat, that's worth way more.
You see it in everything. I mean, things that are built today don't last nearly as long as things that were built in the 50s or even before that. So
which is part of what was so awesome and admirable about your book anyways, that you wanted to get an older boat because they are made so much sturdy. And you said that this company that made this boat is Westsail.
So it's the Westsail 32.
Westsail.
And they were built out on the West Coast. I can't remember exactly where, but they're based off of these old designs, Archer Adkins design boats that were like based off of life rafts, like Norwegian life rafts or something. It's got a really creative history to it, but they essentially, the goal of this boat was to make the strongest boat they possibly could that could handle anything and everything. And they did a pretty good job.
It seems like it worked out really well for you.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I've been through some ugly stuff. That's for sure.
Yeah. And what's great about this Westsail is that, like, I feel like nowadays, if we wanted to have someone making quality boats, we just rally behind them and be like, make boats again. That's who we would go to, right? It's like, we want really well constructed, well thought out boats. We go back to, it's unfortunate that they went bankrupt, but with a legacy like that, I feel like you could come back anytime when the demand is right.
Well, there's always a bunch on the market. They usually sell from between $20,000 and like $50,000, but they do say that if you were to try and rebuild a Westsail 32 today from scratch, it would probably cost you about $300,000-$400,000.
Jeez,
right? And I mean, with inflation and everything, it's like that makes sense. At the same time, with an investment like that, if the boat's going to last you 70 years, sounds like a worthy investment considering.
Let me just. I have to stop you there though, because a boat is a hole in the water that you throw money into.
Investment was the wrong word.
Right.
Totally the wrong word. I didn't mean investment.
Yeah. Oh no, I know. I just wouldn't want any of your listeners to be like, I think I'm going to go invest.
It's all right.
We're going to invest in a boat. You mean you're going to sink money into a boat? You could just burn the boat next to a pool and it's the same effect.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. We get a lot of people who show up with a boat really happy, smiling. They're like, I just was given this boat. It's free. I couldn't believe it. And I'm like, no, it's not free. Yeah.
Like you were suckered into that is what happened.
Yeah, offloaded to you.
Yes, yeah. You've been handed debt. Is what you've been handed. Yes. Okay, great. All right, so this kind of a good lead into my next one. Can someone with no sailing experience find a job on a boat at entry level? And if so, what kind of jobs are available?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Really, what I always tell people, because I do get this question, quite a few people are wanting to sort of jump into that world, and they're like, well, how do I start? First and foremost thing is to just get down to your nearest marina, anywhere where there's sailboats, and you just have to go and start talking to people. Sailors love to just sit and chat and all that. And typically, if you're looking for actual, quote unquote, you're looking for work, it always starts with cleaning supplies and rags and waxing and all that. And it's good because it allows you time to get to know boats, because essentially they all have the same compartments and components, but they all need to be cleaned, and you familiarize yourself with those. And typically, if you got a good attitude and you work hard, most times the people will want to have you on the boat when they actually go out and use it. and then you can develop those skills. And then all of a sudden, you know, the world kind of keeps opening up. You can then start crewing professionally with people, or you can do yacht deliveries, or you can work on like private boats as like a crew member. Cause some people have, you know, an 80-foot sailboat and they need 3 or 4 people to operate it. And so they need to, you know, fill those slots. And, you know, it's kind of like any of the jobs on cruise ships or anything like that. You start out on the lowest rung, but if you like it, you can just kind of keep staying in that career path, and you'll go up and up and up. And the ultimate goal for most people is to get up to like the captain's position. And that only comes through the experience of going from the absolute bottom all the way up.
It's I'm a very adventurous sort of person, and my oldest son. So then what you're saying is it's plausible that me and my son could go up to Michigan for a summer and find a summer job, essentially all summer long, working on boats at a marina, and then just come back at the end of summer, and now he has new life experience. It's possible.
It is possible. Absolutely. I used to, when I first started getting into, working on boats, I used to go down to Fort Lauderdale. And I mean, my first bunch of jobs were just cleaning engine rooms on everything from 20-foot boats to 150-foot yachts, and spending 2-3 days in an engine room and just cleaning. And it's miserable and it's awful. But again, if you work hard, then your reputation goes up, and then you get more jobs, and then you get the job you're looking for.
Right. Yeah. And that's one thing. Like me, I really enjoy hard work. It's like when I'm working hard, I'm happy. I'm like, yeah, this is great. Where most people are like, oh, this is shitty. I'm like, yeah, we're breaking a sweat, man. Like my knuckles are bleeding. This is great.
Me being a naturally sweaty person anyway, I would rather be working hard and sweating than just like
sweating and not
sitting somewhere and sweating. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah.
Like it just feels different. I don't know why it feels different. It just does.
Yeah, no, it is. And my son's very much the same way. You know, like we started karate about 2 months ago, and we got to the point where his knuckles were bleeding from hitting the heavy bag. And that was a badge of honor. Yeah, and that was a badge.
Right.
That's how all martial arts is, right? Your
so,
scars are badges of honor.
They are. They really are. And so that's awesome, man. I'm so excited for basically him to be old enough for me to just take him up to Michigan and try to find a freaking job, man. That will be awesome. Okay, cool. Well, thanks, man. You've given me a whole. We're done with the podcast. I got things to do. I got to start doing some research on Michigan and. Okay, so you have more questions, yeah?
I did, yeah.
Well, go ahead.
It's all right. No, I was just letting you go.
I got tons.
The other two I have aren't even really about sailing. So I did have my next one would be have you ever thought, like, do you have plans on writing anything else as far as like other adventures? I don't know if you're still like doing specific like goal-oriented adventures. I'm not sure what other word to use, but because I know like in the book you mentioned a couple times about how like you hiked the Appalachian Trail a little bit before you sailed. I just wasn't sure if you were planning on writing any other stories that kind of involved that, or if you're planning on another big sort of mission or quest or whatever.
Well, I have 2 other projects, I'm going to call them rather than books, that have been in the works for a while. One is actually about the Appalachian Trail hike. Okay. And the trouble with that one was once I got to around 50,000 words or so, I kind of went back, and it was the most boring thing I've ever read in my life. And I need to figure out a way to make it a little more interesting, make it a little more funny. And I sort of stalled out completely on it. And
that Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, right.
I think you could.
they walked for thousands of miles.
All they did was walk in this.
I know, but they kept it going good. It's the side stories that I think really punch you through.
Right. Yeah, probably.
Yeah. So as that one stalled out for a while, the nice part about these is, again, I have my journals and things like that. So I can sort of shelf it for a little bit. Also if life takes me to a place where I'm working, 10 hours a day and am exhausted at the end of the day, I can't write. Yeah. The other one though, that I've been working on most recently is about the doldrums, and that's kind of what you were sort of researching when you found me. And essentially it's this band around the planet just north of the equator where there's very little wind, and you can get stuck there. And I've had to cross the doldrums in the Atlantic 7 times. And sometimes it goes well, sometimes it's terrible. But it's this interesting place because almost everybody recognizes that term, the doldrums, but they don't know exactly that it's a physical place on our planet that's one of the most beautiful, terrifying, lonely, exciting places you'll ever see. And it's this balance that Mother Nature is doing. It's also kind of almost the place where hurricanes are born. I mean, it really is this fascinating spot. And I have so many crazy stories from what it takes to sail through it, when you're motoring through it, all that stuff. And so this book is tentatively sort of titled it Sailing Through the Doldrums, just to go with the sailing into oblivion thing. But
sweet,
I don't know. I'm working on it. It's I think that one's more of a collection of short stories, really, but they're all based around just this miraculous balance of extremes that happen down there. It really is a place.
That's awesome. So for a book like that, are you like consulting meteorologists or anything like that?
I'm mostly just trying to read up other people, like mostly just trying to read other people's stories that are a little more informed than I am about what is going on there, and also the history of some of in the great age of sailing, because those guys, sometimes they would launch their little boats and try and row the big ship through the doldrums. And all these things have happened in those. So yeah, I want to, rather than just tell my little stories, I want to have it be, I guess, a little more professional type book where you're getting a bit of the history, you're getting the meteorology, and just to spice it up a little. Because when I read a lot of other people's books, especially like The Perfect Storm is a great example, because when you finish that book, all this history about Gloucester and the fishing industry and all that. So I don't know, it's going to be an attempt, and it's going to be hard, but it definitely, it's what I'm going to try and do with this one.
Yeah, I'll be looking forward to reading that. That'd be awesome. So when you say the great age of sailing, is that different than the height of maritime exploration?
Yeah, when I say the great age of sailing, I'm talking about the times when the big clipper ships were doing all the runs from like the East Indies, going into the Southern Ocean around Cape Horn and getting back with all their goods to beat everybody else back to Europe and sell their products for more. That was when this was probably 1800s. And the Americans were involved with this as well, because we built some of the most fantastic, fastest clipper ships out there. And, that was the name of the game. If you picked up all your spices and all your stuff from a said destination, these guys would race these boats. And so they were really just these mavericks that were down there, and they were the ones, because they didn't have the Panama Canal or anything. So they had to go into those rough waters, and just, I mean, the speeds at which they were doing it. And, you're talking about a captain, not alone on his boat, but with a crew of like 40 people, and they're pushing this boat right to the edge, and just absolutely amazing. And, it also was sort of sad because it led into the invention of the steam engine. And then they literally took most of these ships and chopped the masts off, put an engine in it, and then that was it. Basically turned into a barge.
Right.
So it was sort of short-lived, but man, classic. And you can see it in some places. I'm up here in Maine right now, and we see the schooners, and there are these old wooden ships, and they're beautiful to watch, but they're so hard to maintain. The amount of work that goes into
imagine. Oh yeah.
So, wow. Yeah. Okay. So then, these old clippers, you say that they were just hauling it. About how many knots would that?
I would think in the Southern Ocean and stuff, they were probably doing, I would think 15, 16 knots. And for a ship like that, and then they probably would have been able to surf the waves and things as well. I mean, it's kind of funny that the bigger and the longer a ship is, typically the faster it can go. There's an equation that goes into the hydrodynamics of a hull. Like, have you ever seen the front of even the big oil tankers have a big bulb on the front just below the water? And that's just to increase that water line even further. And then it also helps with the friction against the water. But
right.
Yeah, I mean, so a little boat like mine is top speed just going through the water might be like 4.5 or 5 knots, but I can surf a wave at 20 if it's a big enough wave.
Okay.
Nice. Yeah. And I noted that, like, I had to look up a conversion of knots to miles per hour so that I had a good.
Right.
So he has that actually in the beginning of the written book.
Yeah, in the beginning of the so now you're getting fancy about it. Like, oh, see, this is what you miss out on when you listen to the audio.
For the true connoisseur, you have to have that.
Yeah. That's exactly.
Which I was going to mention. I actually appreciated that too, being someone that also knows nothing about sailing.
Right.
Just to kind of give me a reference and other readers a reference of what you're meaning when you're talking about like F6 and how many knots you're going and stuff like that, because otherwise I would have been lost.
Yeah.
Well, and I've read some books where they actually, or listened to, where they actually say that every time they say like we were going 6 knots, they'll say 6.8 miles an hour. And
that seems like a waste of time.
Once you hear that for the 150th time, you're sort of like, geez, guy, I got it. I got it.
Not only that, but I found that once I looked up just 2 different conversions, like when I looked up, what the difference between 8 knots and 14 knots was like, okay, so then when they say 16, I know it's just a little bit fast, like it was,
right.
It was much easier to gauge the speed once I had some idea of how it converted, Okay, so you said that on the Mighty Sparrow, there were leaks, but they were all above the waterline. Is there something that you can use to patch leaks while you're at sea?
Yeah. Well, for anything above the waterline, so that's not, above the sea. So the only thing, if a wave, comes over, then it drips into the boat. Those you just use basically any sort of sealant. In the marine industry, we pretty much use something called 5200. It's really super strong sealant, but underneath the waterline, so the hull of the boat, if you've got a leak there and it starts coming in, it's only going to get worse and worse. But you can't just slap some duct tape on the top of it, because the water's under pressure. It's going to
major
going
pressure.
in.
Yeah.
There are ways, you basically have to swim underneath the boat, and then there are adhesives that you can paste up in there. I have only had to do this once on sort of one of the trial sails, but I was out, maybe 400 miles offshore, and I developed a leak from one of the little sensors that's underneath the boat. And one of the old timey ways to deal with this is you get a whole bunch of sawdust. So wood sawdust, and you put it in a bag, you swim under, you open the bag, and you sort of spread it around where the leak is. And because the water's going in, it sucks up some of that wood particles. Right. And as the wood swells, it
fills
the
awesome.
hole. And
that's actually pretty cool.
It kept me going for the next, I think it took 2 more weeks to get back to land after that. And it never dripped again.
Wow.
Nice. Okay, cool. That answers that. All right. So toast to Neptune. What is the significance of that?
That's just one of those sort of old sailing traditions where you're just trying to tip your hat to the god of the sea, and hopefully he gives you a nice free ride without, because that's the one thing when you head out to the open ocean, whether it's just off the coast or out in the middle of the Southern Ocean, the ocean can become such a violent, horrible place, and it's completely foreign for us. It can destroy any boat, and you sort of assume that risk whenever you go out there. And so if you have to tip your hat and take a little shot, hey, I'll do that.
Oh yeah, no, any excuse to self-medicate while we're at sea, right? Yeah, no, I love it. Okay, so the engine on a sailboat, that's for when you are coming into port or for becalms, or is it just for when you're trying to avoid collisions with on a heading with no wind?
Pretty much all of the above. Yeah, you don't have to have one on a boat. It definitely comes in handy, especially pulling into a dock.
Yeah.
I typically will just float around out in the ocean and wait for the wind because I don't like the sound of the engine. It's an old diesel and it's really loud. But it's come in handy for collision avoidance for sure. I've had a few situations where I'm going through, a scalloping fleet off of George's Bank or something, and there's 20 or 30 of these boats, and I'll fire the engine up because they're doing zigzag patterns, and I'm just sailing, trying to stay out of their way. And it's nice to be able to put it in forward and be able to boogie out of somewhere. So it's kind of just a safety thing. It's really just an auxiliary engine because the main power is those sails.
Yes. Like I said, I knew some of these were going to be pretty easy, just toss up yes and no type questions. You got more, right?
I know there's multiple times. I guess I have one that's not. There were multiple times in the book you mentioned like being afraid of getting into the water because of where you were.
With swimming.
Like swimming.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah. Did you ever have a point where you saw like a bunch of sharks trying to like gather around you? I know you saw whales a lot.
Sharks are pretty. They typically start snooping around if you've been becalmed for 12 hours or more. They just start to investigate because the noises that you make on the boat sort of reverberate through the fiberglass. And it attracts things. But it's, I've seen plenty of big sharks as I'm sailing out there. There was one though, long before my voyage. We were on a yacht delivery from South Africa to the Caribbean, and we were in a 43-foot catamaran, and we passed right by a great white that had to have been very close to 20 feet long.
Jeez.
And we're just looking, and it's just cruising right at the surface. And we all looked at each other like, if any of us jumped in right now, that would eat us. Like, no problem. I mean, huge shark. Yeah. And I don't know, it always sort of scares me just, knowing that stuff is around. And if you're unlucky enough to jump in the water when one of them is sort of nearby. And
I remember, especially when you were talking about trying to get scrub off.
The barnacles.
The barnacles. Yeah. You're like, I really didn't. You wrote like you really didn't want to get into the water.
Well, because you're making all that noise, so that attracts things, and then you're scraping these barnacles, and they're falling into the depth because out there, when you look down, you're just seeing blue for, it might be 2-3 miles deep.
Right. Yeah.
And you're just,
no
your
idea
brain
what's down
goes
there.
crazy. Yeah, exactly.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm not saying I blame you for thinking that.
No.
I completely understand.
It's a well-warranted fear.
I don't want to step on crabs on the beach. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I'm afraid of fish in lakes. So no. It's, not afraid of them, but I don't want them touching me.
Yeah.
Right. Well, it is but I think my biggest fear probably is whales. Just because they can damage the boat if for whatever reason they get a hankering to slam their head into your boat. They can sink you really quick. And there's been enough stories about it that I don't know, that definitely squids me. They're just so big. When they're bigger than the boat, it's like, holy cow, look at that thing.
Yeah, like what you can do about that.
It makes you realize
no giant squids though.
Nope, never seen a giant squid.
Okay,
but
horrifying.
There have been times though where I find, middle of the night and the ocean lights up with phosphorescence, and they must have been some sort of large squid because I was seeing these outlines, 3-4 feet long, tubular, and they'd blink on and off. And I'm pretty sure those are pretty large squid. So there's a lot out there, and it would definitely eat me if I jumped in for sure.
Yeah. Wow. I had a similar question to that. It's coming later. Very similar though. So have you ever sailed on like an 18th century ship?
No, I never have. The closest was just walking around on, I believe we went on the U.S. Constitution when I was a kid. But that's about it. Yeah, I've never been able to get out on one. No.
Have you wanted to?
Oh gosh, yeah, I would love to get out on one of those. I think it would be just an absolute blast. And they do they do cross oceans still, and you can pay and you go aboard and you can do all the line handling and get yelled at by the captain and all that sort of stuff. I mean, maybe someday I'll do that. I've had friends who have done it and they say they really enjoy it. I think it would be pretty cool.
Yeah, I think that would be amazing too. That, you know, I mean, naturally big fan of pirates, you know, you think of
right,
from the
yeah.
1715, you know, era. Awesome. Okay, so on these big ships, okay, when I see, like, especially in Black Sails, when they were becalmed for freaking 21 days in the Sargasso Sea, I wondered, wouldn't this is like, you know, slave ships used to have these giant oars that stuck out of the side. Wouldn't that come in handy? Like, or are ships just that big so like oars wouldn't help? Because I would start fashioning oars.
Yeah, I mean, but the thing is, out there, you don't know. You could, if the minute you put your oars in and start moving, you're going to move really slow. But still, if you were doing 1 knot, you're making, you know, 20 miles in a day or whatever. But you might just be sort of following the calm, and if you had stayed put, the wind might come, because all these weather systems are moving.
Yeah, that's right. Okay.
Even a place like I believe the Sargasso Sea is sort of right in the middle of the Atlantic, towards like in between Bermuda and the Azores, and it's technically it's like the Bermuda High or the Azores High, so it's a light wind area. But you can, it meanders around, so you might just be rowing yourself into even a worse calm. And you'd have, I mean, it'd be exhausting. I couldn't even imagine.
I no doubt about it. No doubt. I mean, you know, I think of at 21 days, I mean, which just seems unheard of, right? Like at day, you know, 7, 8, 9, you end up going, okay, we've got to get moving somehow, right? Like even if we're taking it in shifts, I mean, you know, on this giant ship, they've got a crew of like 28 guys, right? So it's like, you know, 7 to 8 guys rowing on 4-hour shifts, and you know, like, yes, it's going to be freaking exhausting. Yes, you're not moving, but like the alternative is 2 weeks from now you're eating each other. You know what I mean? Like, that's the alternative.
Well, and that's kind of where the horse latitudes term comes in, and it's not in the doldrums, but it's sort of in between the trade winds and the westerlies. And essentially the old ships would get there and they'd get caught in these calms and they couldn't do anything. And then I don't know if it was they had to eat the horses or they had to throw the horses overboard, but that was essentially it. It was like they'd be stuck for so long,
right?
They'd have to, you know, make some pretty rough decisions. And
yeah, and I mean, I've heard a lot of stories of people having to eat horse. You know, like even just like westerns. You know what I mean? Right. You get caught, and
that was like
Indian shoots you down.
That was almost an emotional part in the movie Defiance, when he had to shoot his horse, when they're all like living in the forest, and they had to eat the horse because they're all starving in the Russian winter. You know.
Yeah, you're talking about Daniel Craig. Defiance. Yeah, man, what a great and underrated
movie. I'm gonna have to look.
Talk about. Yeah, that's cool. Okay. All right. In your experience, what are the most dangerous waters for weather? Is it the doldrums?
No. The doldrums are typically they might be violent, but it's usually short-lived. I would say it's sort of 2 categories. I think you're going to see probably some of the absolute worst weather either in the Gulf Stream in the North Atlantic or in the Agulhas Current underneath Africa. The reason being, those are some of the strongest currents in the world that then get hit by, in the north, big systems that come off of the Canadian Shield and make these they call them nor'easters, but you get a northeast wind going against the Gulf Stream, and that's where the waves can get up to, you know, over 100 feet and breaking. Wow. Down south, you get these big storms that come off of Antarctica. They run into the Agulhas Current, and again, you've got the opposing current and wind, and they call them square waves, and they could take down the biggest ships in the world. It doesn't matter. If I were to pick one place where my own personal sailing I feel is the most dangerous, it would just be the Southern Ocean as a whole, because of the isolation factor.
Mhm.
In the Atlantic here, if I'm sailing from Maine down to the Carolinas, if I get in trouble, I can pop my EPIRB and the Coast Guard's going to know where I am and they can reach me with a helicopter.
Right.
In the Southern Ocean, I'm on my own. At best, absolute best, I might have a week of being in a life raft before I get rescued, but it's too cold and it's too wet and I'm going to die anyway. So it's one of those things where once you breach the Southern Ocean and you're down there, it's the loneliest place on the planet.
Yeah.
You know, I'm pretty sure when I was crossing the Pacific 160 days into this trip, when I was near Point Nemo, I was probably the most isolated human being on the planet for, you know, a week or something like that. You know, the closest people would be on the International Space Station.
Right. And you were, you mentioned that quite a few times, a few times in the writing too. So
yeah, now that I think that helps put it into perspective how isolated it is. The closest people
would have
been on the International Space Station. Yes. Yeah, like which is what 2 or 3 miles up into the sky.
Yeah.
Yeah, like still.
Oh no, I think
people.
I think it's about 200 miles. Yeah,
200 miles.
Know, I'm an American with no sense of geography.
No.
What the hell are kilometers?
We just you were talking about the South Sea being cold.
Yeah,
and everything south of the equator to me is just warm.
Right? Oh, just hot.
You're insane. Yeah. There's no cold down there. Antarctica doesn't exist. Come on now.
Yeah.
Oh, it was snowing in April when I was rounding Cape Horn.
It's really funny. It's really funny, Mitch, to think about like the Americans' perspective on it. We've spoken about that because it is like we're like, oh, it's south. Because when we think south, we think of like around Africa and South America.
Warm, yeah.
But there's a lot south of that.
Yeah. There's a whole ocean.
Yes, yeah. So you go far enough south, and you're where literally Edmondson died. Okay,
right? Yeah, like it's like
where Ernest Shackleton couldn't make. Oh, there we go. Boom. Gosh, dang it. Okay, so. For the podcast.
He kicked me. I don't know.
Yeah, Josh, maybe you ought to smack him. I don't know.
Well, because I subbed in The Life Aquatic because I couldn't remember for the life of me what my 5th movie on my list was.
Yeah,
that's why I subbed in The Life Aquatic. My 5th movie is called The Endurance. It's a from the year 2000 about Ernest Shackleton's journey down to Antarctica for that expedition because their ship got stuck in the ice and they were just stuck and then they all died.
And that's why you couldn't find it on a top 25 list.
That's why I couldn't find it on
because it's not considered a movie. It's a documentary.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. So The Endurance would have been my number 5 for sure. Like, and I remember watching that in high school, summer school. Yeah, I was in summer school. Yes.
I took summer school too.
I took summer school.
Nothing wrong with that.
No, it's just, yeah.
I mean, I did it to make up credits, but I'm not make up, but get extra credits.
But no, it was fascinating. I mean, Lynn Bollinger is probably the best literature teacher in the country, in my opinion. We can fight later. It's all right. Well, we'll join the UFC tomorrow.
She thinks she's the best.
I love her to death. I love it. She made everything so interesting. I could before her, I could care less about Antarctica. And all of a sudden I was absolutely fascinated by all of the science there in a literature class.
When I had her, like, all I remember from that class is she really tried to push her stupid ass book that she gave to free for all the students that were in there. It's like, oh, thanks for this.
I have that book.
Yeah, I probably do somewhere too.
The desk.
I read it, and it was I don't know. Okay, I had problem with authority figures when I was in high school, especially apparently English teachers.
Apparently, I
didn't like Mrs. Ritchie either, and that was like my sister's favorite teacher.
I didn't get along with Miss Ritchie either, but I got along with Mrs. Arbogast.
I liked Arbogast.
I surprisingly got along. I mean, me and Carol Schlotterbeck kept a relationship for 10 years after I got to high school.
I remember thinking, like, everyone talked crap about
who these people are.
Yeah, sorry.
That's all right. I was caught up. I'm listening. This is great.
Get to the point was kind of more of a suggestion than an actual.
Oh, right.
Because we would do a quick like forever. 1 or 2 sentence about a movie, but then we would talk about it for 6 minutes. Follow up and talk about it for 6 to 10 minutes.
Exactly. Yes.
Oh God, I should. When you guys were talking about your teachers, I should have broke in and been like, "Hey, get to the point."
Yeah.
You always think of
missed
that stuff
opportunity.
later. I know.
Well, maybe
Dang
next
it.
time. No.
Hey yo. All right.
Okay, so most dangerous for waters for weather. You'd said there's basically two parts there, right? Where the Gulf Stream and you get the nor'easters coming in. All right, what about for pirates?
For pirates, I'm pretty sure like the Malacca Straits and Southeast Asia are still the two major hotspots for all that. You know, the Somali coast. Basically, you get into the Indian Ocean. If you go north of Madagascar, you're getting into pirate waters. And I was way south of that. So
Right.
people always ask if I dealt with it, and I definitely didn't have to. But
Right.
yeah,
Well, tell them to read the book.
yeah, I know, right?
Read the book. You tell me. Did I deal with pirates? I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know.
But yeah, I mean, typically they are using small boats, and they are after sailboats though, because a sailboat can again give you a couple people for ransom, or hopefully some valuable stuff on the boat, and they can just sink the sailboat and it all disappears pretty quickly. I know there's some piracy down in the Amazon Delta, and I think those are kind of the big major sort of hotspots, and the coast of maybe Nigeria, but I'm not 100% sure on that one. I wouldn't want to
we don't want to offend our pirates.
Yeah, exactly.
Who's not pirating? Yeah.
Right. I've only ever once had anything that scared me where I thought, oh man, I might have an issue here, and it just happened to be a fishing boat, but it was covered in rust, and it typically out at sea, if you're going to go approach somebody else's vessel when you're 1,000 miles offshore, you're going to call them on the radio or something. And these guys just came and steamed up right next to me. And it's pretty
those
unusual.
the ones that tried to sell you the tuna that you talked about?
Yeah. I mean, I was shitting my pants. Sorry if I say that, but I was terrified because the boat didn't move fast. So for about 15 minutes, I'm watching this thing approaching me, and I'm looking at it through the binoculars, and it looks like a derelict, what you'd see in a movie of the pirate ship, a modern day pirate. And I'm just like, oh man, but there wasn't really anything. I couldn't stand up to him. I had a shotgun on board, but that wasn't really for pirates. So,
Right. That's for when the Marlins jump on board, right?
Yeah, honestly, it's for if a shark comes up and starts trying to take bites out of the rudder or something like that. I've read stories about things like that happening, and I mean, you never know. You might need it. So
that's awesome. All right, so I know that it takes 3 months to develop scurvy. Was there something specific in your diet that you had to prevent that? Or were you just using vitamins or?
Yeah, I had capsules of different vitamins and things like that, but I had 2 or 3 boxes of those little orange emergency powder things with the turbo vitamin C. And just every once in a while I'd pop one of those, and that kept me going. Because the fruit and things like that, the fresh stuff runs out usually about a month and a half in.
Right. Well, and then not only that, but to prevent scurvy, you don't have to have much vitamin C. You just can't have a deficiency for a long time. So
correct.
After 3 months, it's like, oh yeah, I had an orange and now I feel better.
Right, exactly.
It's pretty great. Okay, so is it wise to rely on fish as a food source at sea?
You could do that in certain areas on the ocean, but there are huge spots where they technically, like, you could call it a dead ocean, where there just isn't much life, at least on the surface.
Right.
Because there's not the plankton and the algae. You really need that food chain. And in some of the spots, like in the deep South Pacific, away from all the islands, you pretty much don't have anything that's void of life, anything on the surface that you can catch. And there have been times where I've gone weeks and weeks when I have a fishing line out there and I don't catch anything at all. But then you go through a place like George's Bank or the Grand Banks, and because it's really shallow and the currents are ripping in there, you get the algae, then the plankton, and then all the other fish follow that. So
right. Okay. Yeah. So I just wondered if it was more of because of where you're at. It depends on where you're at.
Right.
Relying on the food source. Okay. Gotcha. So did you ever discover the source of Colonel Clink?
Yeah, Colonel Clink. So that ended up being inside of the mast. There's a few wires that come down from the lights and the little lightning rod, and it goes into a plastic conduit, so a plastic tube that's sort of fashioned to the inside of the mast. And somewhere about a month or two into the trip, the pop rivets that held it came off, and now this plastic tube is clinking around inside of the mast. So every time I was hitting a wave or heeling over or something like that, it would go from one side to the other and big old clink.
Yeah.
And you hear everything on a boat, and it was driving me crazy for a long time.
I'd imagine. So yeah, so it wasn't so much a like an efficiency or problem, more so that it was just going to be annoying.
Super annoying. Yeah. I mean, and there wasn't anything I could really do about it. I did think about ripping all the wires out, but then, I wouldn't have lights.
I wouldn't have lights. I was about to say, it wouldn't surprise me if is your AIS go through the mast as well?
That one, it was going up at least halfway up the mast to the VHF aerial, but it's just one of those things. If you rip all of them out, you've done it. Yeah, that's it. You no longer get those things, those little nav aids. So,
all right, what do you prefer to drink at sea? Because I know that you had rum, whiskey, and beer at different points in the novel. What's your preferred drink at sea?
Preferred drink at sea. Boy, well, I'll tell you. I mean, there's something about cracking an ice cold beer, which is really nice out there. But I don't know. I think if I really had to just choose one, I would probably just say some sort of scotch, because you can just throw a little water in that and it bites you enough that I don't know. It's something about it.
You can still sip.
I really like. Yeah, you can still sip on it, and I don't know. I think it goes back to the first time I ever crossed the Atlantic Ocean on a delivery. I was just the first mate. It was my first big crossing, and the captain was this character. He looked like Dudley Moore. He acted like him. I mean, it was like the spitting image. He was like 50 something years old. He was a Brit, and everybody else on the boat was seasick because it was kind of rough. And he came up on watch after 3-4 days on the boat, and he handed up 2 glasses of scotch, and we sat and drank. And he, most boats, especially deliveries, you're not allowed to do that. And he's the captain, and we did it, and we ended up doing it pretty much the whole way across the Atlantic. And we just sit there and talk old sea stories and sailing stuff, and it made the whole ocean crossing so nice. And it was always scotch and water on the rocks.
Nice. Yeah. Well, and the thing is that I think the reason why you have a lot of dry boats is because there's not everyone can hold their liquor or has any self-restraint. But, I mean, for me specifically, I have my drinking down to such a science. It's like, oh, well, I know how much to take to just get a buzz where I can still function. I'm not slurring my words. I've just got this nice rosy cheek feeling, and I'm ready to go. Like it's just completely different for non-college students.
Yeah. Well, and I think we should probably just throw in there that we do not recommend anybody drink and boat at the same time. It's not a safe thing to do, and
don't want to lower your inhibitions. No,
no, definitely not. And I definitely know a lot of people who party pretty hard, who drink pretty heavily, that when they step foot on a boat, even if it's theirs, they will not touch the stuff because they've had an experience where they they might have had one too many, and then you get a squall that comes in. And then you actually have to do stuff. Yeah. Right.
That'll sober you up pretty quickly, though.
Yeah,
huh?
Yeah, for sure.
Right. That's like a perfect hangover cure, right? A squall.
But it's also the time where you can fall overboard, and then hell breaks loose.
Crap.
So I don't recommend it.
Did you ever identify the gray sludge that was forming in the drinking water?
No, I never have. And when I think back to it now, I kind of wish I would have taking a sample or something like that. I do. My theory is that the water that I had collected at that time period had some Sahara dust in it. And so, because Sahara dust makes it from Africa all the way to the mainland US, and it has a lot of bacteria in that sand. And when you collect water off the coast of Africa there, I've had it where it goes putrid after a day or two. And so it's very important not to put it in your main water tanks that might have like 30 gallons in it. You always want to put it in individual little jugs, drink it quickly before it can go off. But
right.
because I would have caught that water somewhere around the doldrums, which could have been sort of infected with that. But it was, that was pretty gross. Not good.
No, yeah, that would have been scary for me. Like I would have instantly. I've always had this thing about germs in my water when I was
especially
a little kid.
water.
So so it was like that would have been like that would have been terrifying for me. I'd have been like rationing my water. I'd have been like checking vitals every single time I drank something. Like I'd have been a wreck. So the desalination pump and did 1 gallon of water per hour, and it left it to where there's no salt taste.
Yeah, none at all. It rips it all right out of there.
That's cool.
Yeah, they work pretty well. And if you have the means, you can get one of those that has its own electric pump and all that, and can produce, 50, 60 gallons of water every single day for very little electricity, which is what most sailboats are in need of. But they're expensive. They're thousands and thousands of dollars. And my budget for this whole thing was so small. It was,
which to me,
we know nothing about small budgets.
No, we know nothing about small budgets. No, which to me makes it all the more admirable. Like to do it again. It comes down to it's not the tools, but the man, right?
Right. Yeah.
Because you
didn't just buy your way across the sea.
I definitely appreciate that, but it's hard because a lot of the things are kind of expensive that you need, and not doing sponsorships and stuff. It feels good when the whole thing's over, but boy, when you're looking at the price tag for a lot of this, I've wiped out my life savings now 3 times doing adventures, and I don't know. Maybe I'm getting too old for that. I don't know. We'll have to see.
I don't know, man. There's especially when you have that adventuring spirit, it's worth every penny. And the fact that you scrape by to get it done in the first place makes it, each penny weighs more.
It's more satisfying.
Well, and it helps too, because when you do get into, I know from my own experience, when I get into situations where it's really scary and the instinct is like, okay, we got to call this quits. This is out of control. There's part of you that you can look back and be like, well, I wasn't given any of this. I had to work really hard. I used up everything I have. I think I should probably keep going. And it helps, it's nice little prod sometimes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure. When you were going around Australia, was there a reason you chose to go south rather than north? Is it like a customs issue? Is there turmoil? Is it just
no? It's just the weather patterns. Yeah. Okay. Once you stay south, you're in the westerly winds and the westerly gales, so it's all pushing you in the right direction. When you're sailing past other countries and things, if you're outside of their, I think the territorial limit is like 12 miles or something, but basically once you're sailing out of that, you're in international waters, so you're on essentially a whole different planet, I think.
Right.
So you don't have to check in with other people or anything like that.
Well, we've kind of been through. I've got basically 2 more questions that I feel like need to be asked. So,
all right, hit me up.
In the South Tasman Sea, you said you felt like no one should be there. Was that just morale from the squalls, or is it like a otherworldly feeling? Is there a specific reason why in the South Tasman Sea you felt that way?
Well, I think it was just, I went through such an intense gale down there, and the waves, I ended up in a spot where there was a counter current. So the waves got really steep. And I think at that point it was mostly, I don't think it was centered on just the South Tasman. I think it was the Southern Ocean as a whole.
Right.
I was just saying, nobody should ever come down here. This is a no man's land, and there's a reason why. And, I think for me, I was realizing how much luck was actually going to play in me being able to make it around without damaging the boat and having to stop, or even worse, having something happen in the boat sink and me go with it.
Right. Okay. And what makes a ship a yacht?
Oh, that I don't actually know what makes a ship a yacht. I think I would technically refer to Mighty Sparrow as a boat. I wouldn't even go as far as to say a yacht, except for its pedigree and what it's done, I suppose. But I think it's probably just size. The bigger, that's once a sailboat hits a certain size, it's probably going to be a yacht, and then once a yacht hits the size, it's going to be a ship.
I just figured it was like the maritime version of glamping as opposed to camping.
Right.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
We're going yachting.
We're going yachting.
Yes, we're going yachting.
Yes.
Make sure you have your pig cap when you say that. Okay. And I know you got to get out of here. How long were you camping out in northern Michigan after your trip?
Oh gosh, that was great. I was there for, I want to say 3 months. I would have been there, July, August, and September, and I came back in October. So yeah, I had 3 months to sort of get used to being on land again. But I had to, and it's a bit cliche, but I just couldn't go and stay in a building with 4 walls and a roof. I needed to at least be able to feel the wind, and setting up that little camp was one of the best. I will never forget when I had everything set up, because obviously I had thought about how I wanted to set that up for months while I was out at sea.
Yeah.
But I had the first little bonfire lit, everything was working, and I laid down on these wood chips and just I'm looking up at the trees, and I think I probably started crying a little bit, but I was tears of joy for sure.
Yeah.
I was just like, I finally made it. I made it here. Holy cow.
Right. Yeah. That's nice. And now, what was that, like family owned land? Or
my parents have a house up there that we've lived in since I think 90 or 91, and it's just old farmland, and there's a little chunk of forest in there, and they were gracious enough to let me go. But my mom, she definitely wanted me to come home for a while.
Yeah,
she was a little sick of being worried 24 hours a day.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, because you never know when you're going to hear news and what news it's going to be.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty rough. That's one of the probably biggest drawbacks, I think, of doing some of these things that I do, is that there are people who care about you that do nothing but worry. And as much as I say, oh, don't worry, it's what I want to be doing, they're still going to worry. So you're putting them through that.
Of course, yeah.
Okay, and I guess I'm going to sneak in one more. It seemed that 0300 seemed to be the peak hours for calamity. Is that just because
it looked like
normally when
it always comes at night? I don't even know why, but it seems like 3 a.m. If something's going to happen, it's going to happen then. Even on my most recent, like, bigger voyage, the eye of Tropical Storm Wanda came over the boat at just about 3 a.m. and it just, I don't know, some reason it just lines up. Maybe
the
it's
witching
me.
Hour.
The new witching.
I think so. Yeah, it's something, but I think it's just one of those things where it's 3 a.m, something happens, you got to get, but you're like, always at 3. But
right.
And I wonder if part of me wondered if it was a scientific, thing. Like, it's like, at this point in time, the earth is cooled down.
Right.
On this
the
side.
sun is just hitting that. It could be. Who knows? Who knows?
Or is it just that's when you would go to sleep?
Yeah.
So things happen when you're sleeping,
right.
not present on the boat.
Right. Might be a little of both.
Yeah, a little of both. Yeah. Awesome. Okay. And so I think we've already pretty much covered that. You're writing and you're putting together another book on the doldrums. Do you plan on doing another big trip like this? What's your next?
Well, I've made a few attempts on some other stuff. The first one was in 2020, and I was going to do the Americas, so go up through the Northwest Passage, then down around Cape Horn and up. And unfortunately, I was given permission, and then permission was taken away by the Canadian government once I was already up there. And so I ended up being stuck in the Atlantic during that really busy hurricane season.
Right.
And I couldn't go directly back to Maine because there were already hurricanes sort of working their way up. And that was a pretty interesting trip, just because it was the first time I felt like I was really stuck out at sea, because it was at the height of COVID, and
Right.
I just couldn't just pull in anywhere. And I sort of went a little bit crazy. I got to see into the eyes of Donald Crowhurst and what it's like to actually go a little bit crazy and lose control out there. But right now I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to end up doing. I've got a few ideas cooking in my brain, but again, a lot of it, Sparrow's getting older, my sails, there's a lot of things that go into these big sailing trips, so it'll probably take a little while, but I wouldn't doubt that I'll end up heading out within the next year or two, but we'll just have to see.
Yeah, it's the adventurer's life. You get the itch.
You do. Yeah. As much as you say, okay, this is the last one, I'm never doing this again. It's only a matter of time.
Yeah, we're hard headed like that.
Yeah,
adventurers, so we can't help it. All right, nice. Well, so you'll be able to find out more about Jerome and follow his stories on YouTube, and Sailing into Oblivion is the YouTube channel as well.
I've kept all of it. That's the easiest way. So the podcast, the YouTube channel, TikTok, all that, it's all Sailing into Oblivion. And
okay, good.
That way it's super easy.
Yeah. I guess I had one more sort of a spinoff question. So on your next big adventure, do you plan on bringing someone with you?
That's a good question. I do get that one pretty often. It would depend on what I was doing. I have always had just the dream of doing what you'd call a normal circumnavigation, where, you leave from the West Coast with a boat with 3-4 people on it, and you go through the South Pacific Islands, you stop, you go to Australia, you take a couple of years to do it. And that I would never want to do alone. I would always want people with me on that. But when I go and do the offshore stuff, there's something about being alone at sea.
Yeah.
That it's just something happens to your brain and you slow down, and it's almost like a meditative state. But you're so connected with not only the physical, like Mother Nature that's around you, the waves and the wind and the sun, but the planets and the movement of the stars. And especially when you're out there for like 9 months, you get to see like the seasons changing just through the stars. And you notice things like the earth is now pitching this way, and now it's gone back that way, but it takes months to witness that. And I don't know, it's a special time for sure for me out there. And there's something that always draws me back and makes all the discomfort and wetness and disgusting aspects of
totally worth it. Yeah.
Solo sailing totally worth it.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and there's also something. It's a unique experience for the simple fact that we're land dwelling animals.
Yeah.
So to experience that out at sea, to experience our Earth out at sea like that for prolonged periods of time has just got to be amazing. Well, Jerome, we've definitely kept you long enough.
Yeah.
Hey, no, this has been fantastic. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it, and I can't wait to dive into some of your past shows and stuff. I get a little bit of a break here in the coming weeks, so I'll hopefully be able to check them all out.
Well, we're they span 20 some different odd genres.
Yeah,
for our different ones. So I imagine you'll be able to find something.
Yeah, we try to pick a theme every single episode. So
yeah, we try to do something new for every episode, and this one was amazing. Again, let's round of applause for Jerome Moran, both on nonstop sailing around the world.
Yeah,
and a wonderful story to go along with it, man. Like you're who I'm always going to email if I have any questions about sailing or adventuring, and maybe even
absolutely
in Michigan. I'll be like, hey, tell me this.
Yeah, right. Hey, I will.
I could just tell.
More than happy.
I was telling Kelly earlier, I could tell just by reading while reading your book, like you're just a good storyteller. So that's why I was asking if you were planning on writing more things, because sometimes with nonfiction it gets dry, and I'm sure you're aware of that. And it reads like a owner's manual sometimes. But no, like you had enough I don't want to say personality. You had enough personality in what you wrote that I thought it was very engaging and very entertaining. And
Yeah, and enough of your personality.
Yeah,
too.
your personality is what
Oh,
what I was
you.
referring to. But
Yeah.
yeah, so everybody should definitely read this Sailing into Oblivion. You can get it on Amazon or you can listen to it on Audible.
Yep.
Correct.
Yep.
Yeah. So
Well, and I've been working on over the last like 2 weeks or so. I started a new sort of series as far as the YouTube videos go, where I'm trying to tell some of the other sea stories in just I'm terrible at editing and I know nothing really about it. So I'm starting at the ground level, but it's been really interesting taking some of my favorite books and then giving my version of it, I suppose, and then also a bit of my own insight. So I've only got about 6 or 7 of the videos out so far, but it's been fun and the reaction so far has been pretty good. So
nice.
We'll have to see.
Yeah.
All right.
Another thing for us to look out for. And Jerome, if you need any help with editing, man, if you want to set up a Google Drive folder or whatever, I can always help you out with editing.
Oh man. Okay.
And if you're ever interested in making a movie,
next time you want to do the Appalachian Trail, and you need a
well, it is one of those things I was told by, because there were a lot of people that really were, that would be the first thing they said if they were in the industry or knew people in it. They'd be like, oh, I got to introduce you to this guy. We could do a documentary, and almost every single time after I submit, I've hundreds of hours of me talking to a camera or me sailing, blah, blah, blah. They'd always be like, this would really work, but you should have died in the end. Then it's a real story. And I'm
change
like,
the ending.
Yeah. In other words, your mother should have sent us the footage.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. I've put a lot of stuff out on YouTube, but like I said, I have hundreds of hours of footage and who knows, but I'll take you up on that. And who knows, maybe I'll send you a few things and say, hey, what would be the best thumbnail for this one?
Yeah.
There we go. And I'll
Awesome.
help you. I'd be more than happy to help you put it together. It's a lot of fun.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much, Kelly. Josh, Kelly, this has been great. I can't thank you enough.
Thank you so much.
It
was nice. It was very good. I loved meeting you and getting to know you a little bit. So
I can very confidently say this is definitely one of our best episodes.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. Thank you.
So long as you don't think too lowly of yourself, that
No.
the other ones are still good.
The other ones are still
good. Yeah, we don't want to upset your previous guests.
No, but this was great, and it reinforces how we're kind of moving forward into the format with these longer form discussions where we're really digging into things that interest our inner adventurer and storyteller. And,
right.
Thank you again for helping us facilitate that, man. You've been an amazing guest.
Yes.
I'm going to come up with something for us to bring you back on.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Hey, I'm more than happy to, for sure.
And then it won't be as long because you won't have written a book about it that I have a million questions.
Yeah, there we go.
All right, Jerome. Well, again, everyone, thank you very much for listening to the Get to the Point Review podcast. And this has been Josh and Kelly and Jerome.
And
we'll see you guys next time. And of course, this time we also didn't have our cards. We normally do these little.
The only thing really that we should probably mention is DMing for theater.
Yeah, DMing for theater is an event that we have going on right now. We are trying to put one on once a month. It is a fundraiser for fourth wall players. We have essentially turned right now. In October, it'll change. Right now, we have 4 Shakespearean plays that we have turned into playable D&D tabletop experience, role-playing experiences. So you can take part in the stories that have been beloved for hundreds of years.
That's right.
And in the fall, we'll be doing the same thing, but with horror adaptations. And then eventually into superhero games as well. So you guys can find more details on those events in the description below. Be sure to follow Jerome Rand at Sailing into Oblivion, as well as Hohenheim Productions and Fourth Wall Players. And we will see you all next time.
Thank you.
Peace.
Get to the point.